across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is, as always, fabulous to have your company. So much to talk about today. I'm with you live all the way until 1. Don't forget to go to my YouTube page if you miss anything or missed anything from the past week. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe so you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, Rachel Reeves has broken the law by renting out her family home without a licence since she became Chancellor and moved into a flat in Downing Street. The Chancellor has referred herself to the Prime Minister's independent ethics advisor and has had to admit her error to Sir Keir Starmer after she failed to get a rental licence as required for her area by her local council. The Chancellor put her 4-bed house on the market for £3,200 a month last year. Nice little 38 grand extra income for being Chancellor. I mean, what's that? That's about average salary now, isn't it? Well done, Chancellor. Meanwhile, the Chancellor is considering a 2p rise in income tax at next month's budget. That's on the front page of some papers today. It's a move that would clearly breach Labour's manifesto. Of course, at PMQs yesterday, something we all picked up on watching it on the show live yesterday. Keir Starmer refused, in answer to a question from the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, to repeat the Labour manifesto pledge not to increase income tax, national insurance or VAT, whereas in July he had absolutely said 100% he stood by that manifesto pledge. Well, Kemi Badenoch, among the Tories' calls for Rachel Reeves to resign over breaking the law on the rental agreement, they're also saying Rachel Reeves will have to resign if she does breach that manifesto commitment. Don't we need more accountability on these things? I have to say, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Should Rachel Reeves have to resign if she does actually breach that manifesto commitment? Because one of the things we were talking about on the show yesterday was about accountability. How do we hold politicians, governments to account, other than at the ballot box every 4 or 5 years, and giving if we asked by a pollster what we think? How do we actually hold these people to account? What's your thoughts on this? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. Also going to be talking about the litany of cases that we have had of crimes committed by migrants, alleged crimes, and some finally being sentenced and convicted. The jailing of a failed asylum seeker for randomly murdering a restaurant owner is only the latest serious crime committed by an illegal migrant. An Afghan refugee has also been charged with this triple stabbing in Uxbridge, which left Wayne Broadhurst, a dog walker, dead, 2 others seriously injured. MPs and campaigners say this is further proof of the damage caused by the government's failure to control Britain's borders. Quite a lot of outrage still, understandably. We talked about it on the show a lot yesterday, about the 500 quid paid to the migrant, the Epping migrant, for leaving the country, Hadush Kabatu. Cheap at half the price, apparently, but why the hell are we paying these people? Plus, Donald Trump has described crucial trade talks with the Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea as amazing. He marked it 12 out of 10. And the leaders of the world's 2 biggest economies say they're trying to diffuse growing tensions. Both countries imposing aggressive tariffs on exports since the US president's second term began. All that coming up, plenty more besides, loads to talk about on the show. And I'm delighted to say joining me for the whole show is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I must say, actually, something coming up in a couple of hours' time. We're going to have the authors of a brilliant new book. It's out this week called Pornocracy. Joe Bartosh and Rob Jessel are the authors. They're going to be live in the studio. And I've talked about this book a few times since I was given a preview copy of it a few months ago to give a preview blurb about it, and I have to say the pit in my stomach, the absolute horror in my stomach as I read just even the first chapter of this book was extraordinary about what porn, and the sort of porn that, frankly, our young people are seeing these days routinely, is doing to their minds, to attitudes, to safety to women and girls, the damage it's doing to men and boys as well. I have to say, it was mind-blowing. This is a book that is absolutely based on the data, on the facts, about what it's really doing. You really, really do not want to miss this interview, and I cannot recommend this book enough as an eye-opener to those of us, particularly us parents, about what the hell youngsters are seeing and what is affecting their brains right now. So that's coming up later in the show. Just want to flag that to you. So Philip Ingram, I mean, where do we start today?
Well, you just link me to porn, so...
well, I think in every lady's mind, we're all thinking that. Are we not, ladies, when Philip is around? Come on. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, to be honest with you, Philip.
I'll take it.
You'll take it. I'm sure that was an HR. I don't know. But anyway, I mean it lovingly. Among the reasons why Rachel Reeves should resign today, we're told, is that if she does actually breach her manifesto pledge, Prime Minister's and hers, on not raising income tax, national insurance or VAT. They did raise national insurance for employers. They think they can on a technicality, got away with it. No one thinks they have. But we're now talking about the possibility, whether there's just a flag being raised of a 2p rise in income tax at the budget. This is huge. I mean, this is huge. This is going to have such an impact on people. But also over her breach of housing law.
Yes.
Well, OK, before we go to income tax, should we talk about the housing law issue? Because that's the story that's broken this morning in the Mail. She broke housing law, unlawfully renting out her family home in Southwark without a licence after entering Downing Street. She says, look, I didn't know I had to get a licence. Well, there are lots of things you might not know. But
yes, but licences came in Southwark in 2016. They were upgraded on the 1st of March 2022. So as someone who was living in the area, the local council will have informed everyone. But they were upgraded again in November 2023. Now,
you think she might...
She actually campaigned. Now, Southwark is not where her constituency is. Her constituency is up in Leeds. And she actually campaigned in 22-23 to bring in exactly the same licensing laws into Leeds.
And it's not for the whole, like say, Southwark where she lives, which is, in fact, we're in the borough of Southwark right now, just in the south of the Thames. It's not for all areas.
It's like, different wards.
It's like, for instance, I live in a conservation area, right? So there are stricter planning rules for us and things like that. And lots of people, we have a lot of flats that are rented out in our building. And so, we don't allow under the leases, for instance, Airbnb rentals. You have to have a minimum 6 months lease, things like that. So there are lots of different rules. But the fascinating thing, and you're the one who brought this to my attention, so I've got to give Philip credit on this, little bit of furtive secret squirreling. A tweet, now not by Rachel Reeves personally, but a Rachel Reeves account, which is her account as the member of Parliament, effectively for Leeds. Back in, a long time ago, 20th of October this year. So genuinely, just 10 days ago, she actually tweeted, account in her name, on her behalf, I welcome Leeds City Council's decision to expand their selective landlord licensing policy to include the Armley area. While many private landlords operate in the right way, we know that lots of private tenants in Armley face problems with poorly maintained housing. This scheme means private landlords in the area will be required by law to obtain a licence for any residential property they are seeking to let and must meet certain standards to ensure the property is safe and in a decent state of repair. Everyone deserves a safe and secure home. I look forward to continue to work with the local community to improve conditions for renters. So certainly her staff were aware that there was such selective licensing, but she didn't know in Southwark. Now, her defence is, I didn't know, I've rectified it now, I put the house on the market, let's face it, she just started a rather busy job. I think her argument is, 4-bedroom detached house, £3,200 a month, she's been getting rent since September, that she handed it over basically to a lettings agency and no one had ever mentioned to her that there was this licensing requirement.
But I'm sorry, it's her property. Surely she would have asked the letting agency to make sure that they understood if there was licensing requirements. Being a government minister,
she should know.
And she turns around and says, "We were not aware," in her letter to Keir Starmer. Well,
I wasn't aware it was a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, my lord.
Well, exactly. And ignorance of the law is no defence, and it's a criminal offence as well.
Yeah, isn't the issue here though? Really, my God, I don't want to find myself defending Rachel sodding Reeves. Good grief! But isn't the real issue here is that there are all these random laws and you're not going to know about it. So would I think if I owned a home in my local area and I was able to rent out, that I'd think I better check if there is some random licensing. I didn't even know that existed, OK? Now, she knew it existed because her office has tweeted about this in her constituency.
Correct.
So you'd think she, of all people... Part of the problem with this country is there are so many rules and regulations that actually it's hard for anyone to keep up. That said, I, for instance, my area, OK, I put some trellis up on the garden wall, OK? I got planning permission for it. Would most people get planning permission for trellis?
For trellis?
No, they wouldn't. No. But because of my position, I always feel I need to be absolutely whiter than white. I don't want anyone to have anything on me. I don't want any sort of I don't want to be ever in, any newspaper anything for something like that. And this is my thing. you're the sitting Chancellor of the Exchequer. You should have people who know about this stuff.
She's got a constituency office staff that are there to check. She's got her civil servants who'll just go.
By the way,
are you sure that you've got that because you live there? She's got herself who campaigned for it. That's in there, and of course she's got a reputation for getting everything that she's ever written completely accurate, and therefore
she has trouble with detail.
Yes.
Let's go with that.
Am I going to mention 2 letters? CV? Oh no.
Exactly. Should she? I mean, Mel Stride, her shadow of the Tories, he says she should resign over this. Should she?
If we look at why Angela Rayner was forced to resign, it was because she did not live up to the highest standards of the ministerial code. Well, I'm sorry, this is well below even a high standard
the
of
Prime Minister's ethics guy said there doesn't need to be an investigation. He doesn't think there's a problem.
Well, there doesn't need to be an investigation. It's black and white. So she has to go.
Here's the thing. We know perfectly well. Prime Minister doesn't want her to go. He can't keep losing. He can't losing.
Well, he can't afford to lose her.
He can't lose another one
before the
budget. Also, crucially, it's not just because it's for the budget. It's because she's going to be the one who's going to take the heat for the awful budget. Yeah. And then he fires her. Yeah. And then it was Rachel, as if he isn't, by the way, his job title, formally, not Prime Minister, First Lord of the Treasury.
Yes.
He gets the final say on these things. I mean, she's again. This is just you're just not very good at keeping up on your stuff, and you don't have a staff who make sure you do. I mean, I would have thought in her position, you've got people who go, let's just double check on this. But would I think to check up on this? No, I'm guessing there are loads of people. There are loads and loads of regulations. So I live in a house. We now, because of what's gone in Grenfell and slum landlords, we have to have a house of multiple occupancy licence, which. I mean, again, only if you look this up. No one comes and tells you. You have to look it up to see what the legals are. Otherwise, your building insurance isn't valid. And because, like, if it's more than half the people in the building rent out, you do have to have it. If it's less than half, they don't. I mean, I don't know what difference that. We're quite happy for people to have slum life if they're a minority of people who are renting. The laws around this are very complicated. They're full of red tape. A lot of them are completely pointless. They're overkill. Oh, God, I hate this. I don't think it's a resigning matter. I just don't.
Well, yeah, that's from your position where you're not responsible for the finances of the country. You're not responsible.
Thank God, everybody.
You're not responsible for a lot of these little laws and legislation and influencing them at one of the highest levels in government. And I'm afraid she is. And therefore, when it comes to you're comparing it against the standards of the ministerial code, she's well below that high standard. And she's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. She's effectively number two. She's effectively number two.
I've got more of an issue over the income tax rise. I've got to be honest with you. Now, again, is this just? I mean, a lot of the stories we're getting about the mansion tax, income tax. A lot of these stories they're flown as kites. It's called kite flying by the Treasury. They want to test the waters. They will know already what they're doing. They have to send. I think is it a week's time? They have to send the documents to the Office for Budget Responsibility for them to have time to analyse the numbers before they have to actually physically print the budget. We might look at it online or hear it from the Chancellor on air, but there is actually a physical, big, bulky document with a lot of appendices afterwards, which is where all the real stories are. But if the main message that has been going out, before the election and since the election, is that all these little rinky-dink changes to taxes, or getting rid of winter fuel allowance for elderly people, then backtracking on it, all welfare reforms, 5 billion or whatever, it doesn't touch the sides of what is needed. And actually what is needed, if you really need to repair the public finances, is a widespread tax rise. 2p rise in income tax. I'm fascinated. It only raises about sort of 6 billion quid if it's on the basic rate. But should she have to resign?
Well, she's got a fiscal policy completely wrong. And you look at everything that's in there. She says she inherited a 22 billion black hole. The OBR couldn't find it. But the OBR is now saying the black hole is now 40 billion. Now, that's another 18 billion in less than 18 months. It took the Tories 14 years to get that 22 billion that the OBR can't find, black hole that the OBR can't find. And then we get Keir Starmer turning around in July and saying, no, we're not going to break our manifesto. And then yesterday refusing to do it.
Oh, I mean, the PMQs was such a... And Kemi Badenoch saying, well, I asked you that question in July, and in July you said, yes, you stood by those manifesto commitments, and it was so obvious his answer did not stand by.
And therefore, she is, in military terms, his staff officer for all matters financial. She will have done the planning. Well, she didn't do any planning, clearly, and given him everything that went into the manifesto, and it's quite clear that nothing has been thought of. If Labour were coming in at the very beginning saying, we're going to increase the defence budget to 3 and then 5% of GDP, we're going to do this, we have to pay for this, So I'm afraid for when we get in, we're going to put 2p on the pound on income tax to pay for this, pay for the NHS and pay for everything else. I think everyone would have gone, that's painful. But yeah, okay, right, we'll do that.
No, I don't think they would. No, genuinely, this is my thing, is that actually voters, this is my issue with everybody. And I've said this a million times and I'm going to keep saying it. If we keep demanding better public services, better this, better that, I want the same standards as France and Germany have got, you have to pay for it. And you know how they pay for it? They have much higher taxes on everybody. People who don't wait a nanosecond for an appointment in France or in Sweden, they pay much higher taxes than the average earner in this country does as a percentage of their income.
And we've got too many people in this country who are not contributing at all.
Oh my, that's the number one issue to me.
That's the number one issue across the board.
Yeah, I don't put my taxes up, which are paying for some 20-year-old claiming that he's a bit anxious on a Monday morning. Sod that, get back to work.
Or a 20-year-old who's come across on a boat and has put in 4-star accommodation who then commits a crime, and we then have to pay for to be in prison for the rest of his life.
£15 being spent on housing these asylum seekers and illegal migrants, criminals entering this country illegally. And people say, oh, most of these people, they end up getting a right to stay. No, that's because they can't send them home. It's not because they are legitimate.
And because it's quicker to process them that way, and the civil service goes rubber stamp.
Look, we've had 4. We've actually had 4 cases just in the space of the last few days
of a week.
Again, one which only got to, the Somalian national Habi Kabdiraxman Nur. He entered the UK legally, of course he did, and he knifed father of 3, Govinda Singh Johal, at Lloyds Bank in Derby, after his asylum application was rejected. Having said to the asylum staff, I'm going to go and I want to kill people, he got sentenced to a minimum of 25 days. We had, on Friday, a Channel migrant found guilty of the totally unprovoked murder of Rhiannon White, a British mum. She worked at the asylum hotel where he was staying. He stabbed her repeatedly with a weapon. We had, Hadush Kabatu, the Epping migrant hotel sex attacker, set free by accident last Friday from Chelmsford prison.
We had to pay to go back to...
They'll be paying him £500. Now, the argument is, if he kicks off, it's a commercial airline, you have to take him off the airline, and the Defence Home Office Minister saying, look, basically, it would cost us about 10 grand to get him back on another plane, so we pay these people. He was actually hard done by, because actually he could have got up to 2 grand. So silly man.
He'll be back in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, exactly. He's done it. Yeah, then he'll know the full rights he's got. He's done an interview. Saying exactly what we already knew from a lorry driver who was delivering to HMP Chelmsford and overheard the whole thing. That he basically tried to hand himself in. Yesterday we had an Afghan refugee charged with the triple stabbing in Uxbridge, which left Wayne Broadside. He left him dead. Broadhurst, dead, and 2 others in hospital, a 45-year-old man and a 14-year-old boy. Safi Dawood, again, Afghan arrival. He is going to be appearing in court today. He's accused of 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder and possession of an offensive weapon. Have I done them all? Are there any more I need to do?
Oh, there'll be lots more.
And that's just the ones we know about.
Exactly.
But this is the thing, it's off the scale. And we've also found out that the migrant who, the 1 in, 1 out and then came back in again, migrant, he's still here in the UK. And we also know that some of the other migrants who've been sent to France are now trying to return here because France basically won't house them. They're not getting the same deal as they got here, which is why they've come here in the first place. This is totally out of control, and there is really no evidence whatsoever that the government is remotely on top of this.
It's completely crazy, And if these are asylum seekers and they're running away from oppression in their states, we should be housing them to United Nations High Commission for Refugees standard that you'd find in any country where people are fleeing, and that's tented accommodation in the middle of a field, ideally with a big fence around it. So you
with a big fence.
You don't let people out, and you bust the food in. You bust the water in, you make sure that there's enough
Human rights lawyers won't allow it. You know that, I know that, everyone knows that. That's why they closed the detention camps that we did used to have.
But the human rights lawyers are not going then out to all of the countries that are surrounding Syria or into Darfur or into other places saying, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, you're breaking everyone's human rights by providing these safe facilities for people.
It doesn't matter. That's what they're going to say, and the courts are going to go, oh no, these people should be allowed freedom.
It is not someone's complete human right who come in illegally where you don't know anything about them to go out and effectively, by their presence and by the actions of a very small minority, and it is a small minority, but the actions of that very small minority mean that communities are terrorised by seeing groups of young men wandering around going, is something going to happen?
We don't know what the numbers are. That's the reality. We don't know what the numbers are. Of course, do I think that every single person who's entered the country, by the way, they've already committed a crime by entering the country illegally. They've already committed, they usually committed God knows how many crimes just getting across to France and then living the way they do. Now, a lot of these people may just be economic migrants who want a better life. Well, that's fine. But it's still not my sodding problem. But that's not my problem. And they've come here. But this is my question. What is the rate of criminality of sex abusers, rapists, mad people who are going to go on a rampage, apparently random attack stabbing people? What is the rate of that level of criminality that the government deems acceptable? Because I think it's a bit different from the level we deem acceptable. Because for me, the answer is zero.
Yep. Yeah, well,
it's zero.
The government does know, and it'll not define it, and they're probably not gathering statistics to see and look at people coming through. And we'll have to remember that these people have come across from their countries through Europe and all the rest of it under the umbrella of organised criminal gangs. Yeah. The only way young men are going to get enough money, and they're paying thousands of euros to come across, the only way young men from countries where, if you've got 5,000 euros, that will make you rich for life.
So often the whole family club together, but basically a lot of these...
Yeah, but they're in hock to organised crime. Organised crime at the centre of all of it, and therefore these individuals are being groomed as criminals the whole way through their path, and we're letting them in.
Yeah, if they're not starting off as criminals, then no, it's just absolutely no-brainer. I mean, if you're always welcome to call in on any topic you want to call in. You're welcome to call in on that as well, 03444 1000. Just want to get to one other story. It's kind of related to this because we found out about a number of students coming from Gaza, and already we've got, I think, 70-odd who've arrived on these scholarships to study at universities in London, where, of course, we in no way, by the way, have an anti-Semitism problem. I mean, absolutely not. Everything's absolutely fine. But now we've been told, in reverse of the original policy, that they would evacuate the students themselves, but actually on a case-by-case basis, they're going to be allowed to bring their partners and their children. Ugh. If anyone thinks that any of these people are ever going home, they are living in cloud cuckoo land. And I'm going to tell you right now, for certain, I don't know what number of people from coming on this scholarship are going to turn out to be a criminal problem, but I'm telling you at least one of them, despite all this vetting, is going to turn out to be a problem in whatever way, whether criminal or otherwise. One of them is going to turn out to be a big problem for this country.
And the family members as well.
And the family members as well. But yeah, absolutely. Isn't it wonderful letting people in? I mean, you'd have thought, given that they were dealing with genocide and famine, or so we're told, that applying to do a bit of studying in a university in London was probably the least of their worries. But apparently not.
And by doing this, of course, this is going to set a precedence where then everyone else who gets their family refused is going to take the government to court, and we're going to have to pay for all of that. You couldn't make up the disasters that have been created by the government in doing things like this. Let the students in. I've got a problem with that anyway, but certainly not families, children and all the rest. If they want to come here to study, to make it better so that they can go home and be better for themselves, the benefit is they're being allowed to come and study here. If they decide that they don't want to...
No, I'm sorry. I vote no. I don't want anyone from Gaza coming to this country. Full stop. No, I'm sorry. We have established this is a massively radicalised population with views that are completely polar opposite to what we would expect of people arriving in this country. I vote no. I vote no every time. I'm sorry. There will be lovely, wonderful people who would be great academics who would absolutely deserve that role. It's not worth the risk, because I'm sorry, the desire of someone living in Gaza who wants to come and study in London does not trump the rights of the British people and the safety of the British people. End of. I do not trust anybody coming from there. That's not racism. It's not against Muslims. It's not against Palestine. Gaza is a radicalised population, and I think it would be insane of us to accept people from that country. That part of the land.
In every bit of government policy, the rights of the people in this country, of British people, of British passport holders, are secondary to everyone else's rights. And that's just fact at the minute.
Get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts on all of those stories. 0344 499 1000. You've heard what Philip and I have to say. Also, your thoughts on Rachel Reeves. Should she have to go? Should she have to resign? Whether over breaking manifesto pledges in the budget, as we are expecting. 2p rise in income tax on the cards, we are told. Or are they just flying a kite on that? Or over breaking housing law by unlawfully letting out her family home without a licence when she entered Downing Street. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Axel was ordering suspicious Amazon packages to a neighbour's house. The neighbour complained he kept having to receive them, and Alphonse said, "I will tell Axel to stop ordering them." Did he question his son as to what he was ordering online? Why he was ordering a knife on Amazon? We don't know. But what we do know is they failed to stop their son. They bought him the tablet that he researched genocide on. They allowed him to conceal ricin in his messy bedroom. They did not alert the police and have him detained when a week prior to the massacre, Alphonse stopped his son from getting in a cab to go to his old school, presumably to commit another attack.
What they're not probably planning to do is reduce benefits in any shape or form. And they seem to think that you can go on taxing ordinary hard-working people as well as the so-called rich. On and on and on, tax, 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 tax. And that doesn't have an effect on the whole economy, a negative effect, if you're just spending on welfare and other non-growth related areas. This is absolutely a doom spiral.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Let's get straight to your calls. Tarquin's on the line in London. He's called up on 0344 499 1000. Tarquin, what do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. Well, gosh, you're all across all of the points today. Well, I'm on hold here. I'm listening to all things. I've got a view on that, and a view on that. I've got a view on everything. Rewind it back to the one that initially was the Rachel Reeves kind of from the manifesto. I've kind of conflated the two a bit, so do forgive me. I think when it comes to Rachel Reeves, I know you don't think she should resign. I think she should, on their broken window, political version of broken window principle. Once we start to see politicians, whether it's Rayner et al., start to do these things, it just makes me think, well, it's the people, they throw up their hands in the air and think, well, why do I bother? Well, people do because they're decent, honest people. Yeah. But when you see your so-called elders and betters, you kind of think it's not fair. We're not playing by the same bloody rules anymore, are we?
There's one rule for them. And, well, they were too busy. They didn't. Well, if she's going to resign over this, I think she should have resigned over the fact that her CV was a web of lies.
I agree. Totally.
I just think, I mean, quite apart from, I've lost track. Which one was it who seemed to think that he was a solicitor and he wasn't?
That's right. And don't you hate it when they say, oh, lessons will be learned when it's them at fault, and then when it's everyone else, the full force of the law is the other direction. You know what I mean? How dare they? That double standards, again, it annoys British people immensely, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. But you think she should go, but do you think it's over the landlord and not getting the licence, or do you think it's over breaking a manifesto pledge to millions of people in this country?
It's all of that. It's all of the above. I mean, you're right on all of this stuff, and I think the thing again with the landlord thing, the whatever licensing thing, it's like double standards, and it's the fact that it's a criminal offence. If it was you or me or anyone we knew, we'd be getting a knock at the door, not at 3 a.m. for a silly tweet, but because we actually genuinely are now suspected criminal. Allegedly, a comment just says your colleague said it was a criminal offence. So why is it investigated?
Do you not have any sympathy? She goes, oh, I'm busy, I've got this new job, I'm going to rent out my property. OK, she and her team were certainly aware of Leeds, her constituency, they had a similar thing, but that she goes to a letting agency. I would expect if I were in a position to rent out my home, I would expect the lettings agency to know this stuff, even though legally it's not their duty of care. I would have thought this was kind of a basic thing.
Lovely and reasonable, but most of the government blob isn't. They don't get look at the HMRC when they want their money. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Yeah. No, I think that the thing is about, which takes me just quickly onto the situation of how this stuff arises when it comes to like the budget and the 1 or 2% on income tax. I think there should be some sort of, hopefully Nigel will win, and for this reason alone, that him and Richard, etc., will put through a bill, not just the great reset bill of all of the horrible, draconian digital ID laws that are just so un-British. You can't even make this stuff up. That they put through a bill that says, right, when you make it, and I think, well, to be fair, Richard has already said that they will, their party will, that a manifesto is tantamount to a contract. That if you start to say, because otherwise you and me, Julia, we could set a party, the Julia and Tarquin party, and we could say, yeah, we'll give everyone £1 million and then get into power on that premise. Oh no, we were only joking.
Well, exactly, and that's what everyone does. By the way, the Julia and Tarquin party. I mean, how does that sound? For goodness' sake, sounds like we're going to go on like some shooting party with Prince Andrew. Tarquin, we're going to have to leave it there because time's against us. But I always love hearing from you. Thank you so much. I know Rudy's waiting on the line in Bristol. Rudy, my darling, we're going to get to you in the next half hour. I promised you, but I'm going to have to go to a break, and then we're going to be hearing from George Pascoe-Watson, another former political editor of The Sun. We've got lots of those on the books, and you know why? Because they really know their stuff. George Pascoe-Watson up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:38 is the time. Let's go straight to George Pascoe-Watson. He's a former political editor of The Sun and joins us now. A very good morning to you.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
Lovely to chat to you. OK, so among the reasons why Rachel Reeves should resign today, apparently, is because she didn't get a licence to rent out her property when she moved into the flat in Downing Street. It was 11. She lives in the 10 Downing Street one. The Prime Minister lives in the 11 Downing Street one because it's bigger. But she should have got a licence in her local area. She didn't get it. She's broken the law by doing that. We're also expecting, we are told in the newspapers, she could well put up income tax by 2 pence in the pound, a basic rate. A clear breach of the Labour manifesto commitments of July 2024. Are either or both of those reasons why she should be forced to go?
Well, obviously, there's a huge amount of news in this story, which explains why Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, moved super quick, at lightning speed last night to bring an end to this story, because it is destabilising to the government at a critical time, not for the government, but for us, for our listeners and our viewers this morning, because Rachel Reeves, as Chancellor, has to command the confidence of the markets who dictate the price of this country's debt. And all of that matters to us immensely.
Hold on a minute. Are you saying that if there was some question marks about her future, that would affect the markets? Because I would have thought the markets would go up if they thought they were getting rid of Rachel Reeves.
I would say that the markets right now are currently relatively comfortable with her, particularly 6 weeks before a budget, and I think that does matter, which is why I'm saying that Number 10 moves so quickly to try and nip this story in the bud. This story is a difficult story. It's embarrassing for the Chancellor. I happen to agree with you, Julia. I think your view is that this is the sort of thing you would expect an estate agent or letting agent to know back to front. We can't pretend that she is unaware of the licence that's required. She's campaigned for it. So, and she's not a stupid person, despite what some people might think. She's a very intelligent person and would be seen desperately trying to do the right thing by the law. Of course she should. And this, I think, is a mistake, of course. But I think that it's embarrassing and difficult, because it's the sort of thing when you're dealing with taxes and licensing and registration that has legs. And it's the sort of thing that investigative journalists perfectly legitimately can and will continue to look through. What are the unintended consequences?
And especially after Angela Rayner not paying her full stamp duty that was due. I mean, these people seem to have a big problem. We've got Rachel Reeves' problems with her CV. You'd think after the whole, did I not work as an economist at HBOS, Halifax Bank of Scotland? Did I or did not work for 10 years as an economist at the Bank of England? I mean, getting those things in inverted commas wrong. I mean, you'd think she'd be like, for the love of God, I've got to do everything absolutely to the letter of the law. I've got to be seen to be whiter than white. Sloppy is the most generous thing you can say, isn't it?
What I would say is that back in the day when I was in Parliament working for The Sun, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have the scrutiny that public figures have today. And that's just a fact of life. And people now have pasts reflected and scrutinised that they've never done before. And of course, I wonder, Julia, in the days that you and I worked together, how many of the politicians, the governing figures that we had in those days, would have been guilty of the same oversights and mistakes and maybe exaggerations here and there that weren't open to scrutiny, and they are now. And I think that's really what's happening. Do I think Rachel Reeves is a bad person who is in some way corrupt in any way? Not at all. I don't think that in any way, shape or form, and I think that's why the Prime Minister was happy to move quickly.
But he also doesn't want to lose her, because he knows that no matter whatever the kite flying or whatever the actual realities of the budget, and again, it's actually only 4 weeks away, it's creeping up on us rather quickly, that when that budget comes, it's going to be bad. There is no good outcome from that budget. However bad it is, it's going to be bad. And at that point, he wants all the blame to go on Rachel Reeves' shoulders and not his.
I think ideally, that's right. We've seen chancellors being sort of left to carry the difficult news in the past to separate them from the Prime Minister. Although in this case, of course, Keir coming out last night very, very quickly in an exchange of letters and supporting Rachel does make him rather wedded to her. And I think they are actually wedded for the duration. I think what's the other question you asked me was about the 2 pence income tax raise, which is being talked about. It was talked about a little while ago. Resolution Foundation is a think tank that used to be run by Torsten Bell, who is one of Rachel Reeves's junior ministers in the Treasury. And this story has surfaced before. I think a 1p increase in income tax is more likely closer to the mark. And the question will be, but you lied to the nation. You said there would be no raise in taxes on working people. I mean, obviously, they'll find a form of words if they go down this road and try and justify what they've done. The fact is, Julia, this country has way lived beyond its means for some years. We are not generating enough money in this economy and the world's economy to pay for the services and the lifestyle that we've all come to expect. And the only way of dealing with this, really, and keeping the cost of our debt down as a nation, is to cut public spending. And this is where Labour's biggest problem is, and Rachel Reeves's biggest problem is Labour MPs will not let them cut public spending. And as long as that remains the case, they've got to find money from somewhere. And a lot of people say to me, I wouldn't mind paying a little bit more on income tax if I thought the tax was being well spent on a brilliant NHS, on great roads and schools and hospitals and infrastructure. But the fear is the money isn't. The money gets blown away, not on changes and improvements and efficiency gains. It just goes down the same hole on salaries and pensions, and nothing ever changes.
Or asylum accommodation.
Or
500 quid for a violent sex offender migrant being paid to get on a plane back to Ethiopia. I mean, that's the reality. People say they don't trust it. But I agree with you 100%. The answer is actually, I mean, don't put my taxes up and everyone watching and listening to this taxes up at the same time as a load of people are not working and just contributing absolutely nothing and they're perfectly able-bodied and able-minded enough to be able to work. That's where the real problem is. And there's no chance at all that this Prime Minister or this Chancellor's got a hope in hell's chance of getting to grips with that, with, as you say, the Labour backbenchers' mood.
And not only that, if you tie this back to Rachel Reeves's situation right now with her rent licence, that licence, some people say, has been introduced by a whole bunch of councils up and down the country, not to improve the condition of rental properties, but it's a revenue-generating tool because councils themselves have run out of money. Yeah. Why? Because the cost of caring for old people in an age where people live a lot longer has crippled us. We can't afford to do that in the current situation we find ourselves. So everybody's trying to find more revenues from somewhere, and that's how she ends up in a position that she's found herself in this morning. Yeah,
I mean, the budget is just going to be an absolute horror show. It really, really is. And the horror show continues for the Prime Minister and indeed the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, and others over the migrants, sex offenders, rapists, the murderers. There's now another man facing charges, is a suspect involved with the stabbing of a dog walker and a man and his son as well. Just earlier this week, the stories just keep on coming of either people being convicted, being sentenced, being deported, or being charged with horrendous violent crimes. And the government doesn't seem to be remotely getting a grip on this.
I think it's very hard for this government, any government, to get a grip on this situation. This situation has been growing for a long time. And don't forget, it was probably under Boris Johnson's government that the problem began to be more challenging, and it's really hard for the Home Office to get on top of it. The police service is already stretched. You have many, many thousands of officers leaving the force each year, and it's difficult to recruit their replacements. And also, are they being told what policing to prioritise in their areas? And we have a situation where every day, it seems, certainly every week, we're getting difficult headlines, and really difficult headlines. This stuff matters to real people in real communities, and it's their privacy, and it's their respect, and it's their society, and their safety above all else. And there's not a lot the government can do about it because we are stuck with the European Convention on Human Rights, which prevents people from governments from kicking people out rightfully, and even when they do, as you say, the only way we could get the most recent figure out in the last couple of days was by offering a bit of a bribe of £500 of taxpayers' money to do so. And then he goes and does an interview and says, by the way, I was trying to hand myself into the police. And so it all seems farcical. If it wasn't farcical and dangerous, it would be almost comic.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. George Pascal Watson, always good to talk to you, former political editor of The Sun. Philip Ingram, do you want to come back in on any of that?
Well, yeah, I think what that highlights, you're going through each of the stories, is just how negative a position we're in. We've got a new government that's come in with a massive majority. They are firefighting everything at the moment, and they should be in a position where they're throwing out policies that are improving the lot across the country, and they're just not doing it.
No, absolutely, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to be talking more about the details of these income tax rises, what will it actually mean for us, and how likely is it we will see our basic rate of income tax going up. This is Talk.
My friend was murdered last year up on the high street.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It is at 10:52. Just some breaking news for you. Prince Andrew is going to face a private prosecution over allegations of sexual assault, corruption and misconduct in public office arising from the Virginia Giuffre scandal. The campaign group Republic says they're taking the unprecedented step of instructing a law firm to investigate and, if appropriate, they say, commence court proceedings against the disgraced royal. Met Police have previously said they have looked into claims Prince Andrew passed on details of Miss Giuffre, including her social security number and date of birth, to his bodyguard, his close protection officer, of course funded by you and me, asked him to dig up dirt on her after she claimed that he had had sex with her. Andrew, of course, attempted to draw a line on this with a £12 million payment to Virginia Giuffre, partly funded by the late Queen. But Republic says they argue there is a powerful principled argument for justice to be done for the victims of sexual abuse and for those who corrupt public office to be held accountable. Well, fascinating new development there. If the authorities don't want to act, they're saying they will. We'll keep you updated on that. Right now, let's find out what on earth's going to be going on in the budget. 4 weeks away, front pages today suggesting we're going to see a 2p rise in our income tax. Justin Urquhart, student, an economist and chairman of the Regionally Investment Platform, and joins us now. Morning to you, Justin.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, more good news, eh? How much should we trust reports ahead of the weeks ahead of budgets? Because it used to be, 20 years ago, nothing would ever come out. Now there's a lot of what's called kite flying by the Treasury to sort of see just the feeling, how do people feel about certain taxes, but also often to set the ground and make us fear the worst. And then when there's only, for instance, a 1p rise in income tax, we all go, phew, it wasn't as bad as we thought it was. So how much should we trust these reports?
Yeah, don't trust any of them at all. As
there you are then.
Really, that's so straightforward. But as you were saying with Philip earlier, and it's good to see him, a sound common sense as ever. Thank you. But actually, they are kite flying. And what they're going to be doing, if they've got any sense, is actually coming up with really rather some frightening kites. Because if you actually come out to people who are terrified, so they actually come out with bad news, and it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Work on the assumption it is going to be as bad as you thought it was going to be. So what you're likely to see, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's actually 2p, because what she doesn't want to be doing is coming back every single year saying, that black hole, it's just filled up.
Well, that was the promise from last year. It was going to be tough, but they'd found this £22 billion black hole, and then from now on it'd be fine. And it looks like this is going to be worse than last year.
Yeah, it's getting worse. And of course, the Office of
Budget Responsibility.
They've been, of course, have been changing their story as well. And the Treasury, we're told, are absolutely furious with them because actually the figures going back some years are therefore probably wrong. The other thing she should be doing now is actually kite flying some of the more positive elements. For instance, we know there is growth in parts of the British economy, particularly smaller companies, tech companies, those areas, and they can put they don't put government money into this. They can put guarantees up, enterprise investment schemes, those things. You only have to pay for them when things go wrong. Yeah. And so actually have a positive side. But no, what we're seeing is a whole lot of frightening stories coming out, and there's a very good chance that actually some of them may well come true. Yeah. A balance between national insurance and also maybe cutting that by 2%, and then also increasing income tax. That's a reasonable balance, and we'll still give them a positive answer.
Well, that's it. There's been a lot of talk about simplifying things, and again, a lot of people do think when they pay, I paid my stamp, I paid my national insurance all these years, when actually, it doesn't go into a different, it's not sitting there in a little bag in the corner of the Treasury. Like, there you are, that's Justin's money that he's paid in, that'll cover his pension. Rubbish. It's going on day-to-day expenditure on everything, asylum seekers, NHS, roads, you name it. But national insurance doesn't apply to as many things as income tax. So there is an argument for the Treasury. There's talk about, isn't there, cutting national insurance by 2 pence in the pound, but raising income tax by the same amount. So the average worker probably won't notice much difference, but there will be other people who will be more affected by that. Tell us who.
Oh, those filthy swine, the people who have actually retired. They're very tiresome. We really shouldn't be having many of them. And find themselves paying much more tax. Fun enough, you sort of plan for your retirement and all those plans go out the window because the rules have changed. Yeah. Well, I'm afraid we just have to live with that. We know what it's like dealing with these governments. We're living beyond our means. And you're quite right with regards to taxation. That awful word of hypothecation. The Treasury hate actually putting money on one side to say that is for the NHS or that's particular, because they know full well it's going to actually not work out correctly. So they like to keep a big open puddle there, and then they can do with what they wish.
But isn't the thing, though, I mean, organisations like the Institute of Fiscal Studies and others, they've been saying for quite some time that all this sort of rinky-dink, a mansion tax here, a tax on this, non-doms, that actually, A, it doesn't bring in that much money. B, it actually often doesn't bring in any money at all because, again, the taxing of the wealthy over there, very popular with left-wing voters and backbench MPs and the Labour Party. But actually, as we know, those people are very mobile and they leave, and then you get less money overall, and things like that. But the reality is that if we want the sort of services that people have on mainland Europe in many countries, you have to pay the same sort of taxes, and you're not going to be able to make that sort of money unless you're kind of taxing everyone.
Well, what you've got to do, yes, broaden it out. What you remember, the key line here, taxation does not create wealth. Wealth will allow you to have taxation. Get that the right way round. Now go to those areas where we know we're good at, smaller companies starting up and being able to grow, particularly in technology. We've got a lot of those. And, OK, some will get snapped up by the Americans. Our funding, our market funding from the stock exchange and things like that is absolutely useless at the moment, but that's slightly beside the point. Other point to remember as well, remember actually 1% of income taxpayers, the top 1% actually give us 28% of the total take of income tax. And remember, there are only 3 major taxes: national insurance, VAT, income tax, even corporation tax is relatively small, and the rest of them are glorified sin taxes and don't make any real difference at all. Keep it really, really simple, and actually simplified the taxation system so most people understand it, and that way you'll find less people actually trying to avoid it.
And it'd be harder to avoid it.
Yeah, well, exactly, because you make it clear and simple. There's a Tolley's Tax Guide, there's that book that the accountants take to bed for some excitement. You look at that, that's double in pages over the past decade. We've made it far too complicated. So we actually don't strip a lot of that out and focus on the areas where actually short-term creation can help. Back to that stamp duty, well, that's going to be a key one.
Absolutely. I don't think any government's going to any party is going to be able to go into the next election and get elected who isn't promising to abolish stamp duty. Justin Urquhart-Stewart, economist, chairman of the Regional Investment Platform, thank you so much. I'm going to get Philip Ingram's thoughts on this after the top of the hour, because time is it's always against us, because basically we all yap too much because we're just too interested in the topics, because they really matter, whether it's about safety on our streets or whether it's about our taxes, they really do matter to us. But do you think Rachel Reeves should have to resign if she does breach that clear manifesto pledge? I mean, it was black and white. I will not raise taxes, will not raise income tax, national insurance or VAT. If she does any of those, even more than she already did with the national insurance for employers, should she have to go? Proper accountability. Love to hear your thoughts. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is absolutely fabulous to have your company today. Thank you very much, Dean. Also great to have the company, as always, on a Thursday. Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Thank you, as always, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Lots to talk about today. More on Rachel Reeves. Has she broken the law by renting out her family home without a licence since she became Chancellor? Yes, she has. But should she have to resign over it? We'll talk about that. Plus, should she have to resign over breaching, as we're told she is planning to do? And it's pretty clear from the Prime Minister's answers at P&Qs yesterday, refusing to back up those manifesto pledges on tax rises. If she considers a rise in income tax at next month's budget, should she have to go as well? How do we hold our Chancellor of the Exchequer accountable? Plus, the jailing of a failed asylum seeker for randomly murdering a restaurant owner is only the latest serious crime committed by an illegal migrant, hitting the headlines in recent days. Anger over the Ethiopian migrant, to the Epping migrant who's been taken back to Ethiopia, but we paid him an extra 500 quid to get him on the plane without him causing a fuss. And I think people, frankly, are just saying we have had enough. Plus, we're going to talk about Boris Johnson. He's become the fourth former Conservative Prime Minister to criticise Kemi Badenoch for her very sensible vow to repeal the Climate Change Act and scrap her commitment to reach net zero by 2050. Boris, though, warned the Tories they will not win the next election by bashing the Green agenda. Boris Johnson, you're so wrong about so many things. I mean, genuinely, utterly deluded on this issue. But there we are. Go and have another party and eat some cake. No one cares. But I'd love to hear from you on all the topics we're talking about. But in particular, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says Rachel Reeves must resign if she raises income tax, national insurance or VAT at the budget. Clear, in black and white manifesto commitment. Should she have to go? Well, the Conservatives also say she should go simply over failing to legally rent out her family home when she moved into the flat at in number 10 Dowding Street when she became Chancellor, because she didn't get the appropriate licence for doing so in her area. What's your reaction to that? What do you think? Do you agree? Should she have to go? If so, why? If not, why? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. All together now. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost one standard network rate. Message. Philip Ingram, simple question. Should Rachel Reeves have to go? And if so, why?
Yes.
There we are. Thank you very much. We're going to a break.
Well, for a number of reasons. You know, if you make one mistake, it can be put down to carelessness. For CV. Then we've got fiscal policy and talking about tax rises, and she said it wasn't going to happen. There's another mistake, because there'll be some form of tax rise. Tick. Yeah. 2. Oh, and now, her... And we have to remember that her husband isn't someone who doesn't understand rules and regulations, because he's a second permanent secretary in DEFRA. Between the two of them, they seem to have missed the fact that the rules in the house that they own, that they're renting out, which is not in the constituency that she represents, but she campaigned in that constituency for these very rental licences to be brought in, that they somehow or other didn't realise or didn't ask that they needed it.
As I pointed out earlier, you pointed this out to us. I mean, not only, again, Rachel, you need to do detail, especially if you can't remember where you worked. I mean, we shouldn't have too many hopes. Were you an economist? For how long? For which companies? Bank of England, etc. She's a bit muddly when it comes to detail. We know that. But you pointed out, look, she's broken the housing law. And again, I wouldn't have thought that there was such a rule, that if you live in certain areas, that you have to get a licence to rent out your home. She's gone to a lettings agency. Hello, can you rent out my 4-bed home? $3,200 a month last year. She apparently since September, that's what she's been getting. 38 grand a year, guys. So that's about the average salary in this country, certainly in London, right? So for full-time workers, 38 grand, and that's just getting in rental money. But she found she needed to obtain this rental licence because of the area she lived in Southwark. Local authority require that private landlords in certain areas obtain a selective licence to rent out their property. She said she was unaware of it. She's applied for the licence now. The bill broke. She wrote to the Prime Minister about it. She referred herself to the standards independent, investigator. Prime Minister's basically written back within minutes going, no, it's all fine. I accept your apology. He's dismissed calls for investigation. He said he was happy the matter could be drawn to a close after consulting his independent ethics advisor, who decided not to launch an investigation. I mean, the Tories aren't happy with that. But here's the thing, as you pointed out, a long, long, long time ago, 10 days ago, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, on the account, not the Rachel Reeves account on X, but the Rachel Reeves account for Leeds, written by her team in her constituency. That's who will be writing these tweets. She wrote the following. I welcome Leeds City Council's decision to expand their selective landlord licensing policy to include the Armley area. While many private landlords operate in the right way, we know that lots of private tenants in Armley face problems with poorly maintained housing. This scheme means private landlords in the area will be required by law to obtain a licence for any residential property they are seeking to let and must meet certain standards to ensure the property is safe and in a decent state of repair. Now, it is not feasible that this woman can claim she didn't know anything about these selective licences because she had campaigned for them in Leeds, in the area where she is an MP. Her team had written about this in her name, and yet didn't occur to her. I wonder if, shouldn't I double check if
it applies to me?
I think the lettings agency were at fault for not doing it, but then they'll have clauses saying you are responsible for any legal requirements. It's the same as, when you sell your home or buy your home, you're responsible for everything. I mean, and as you say, her husband works in DEFRA. That's all they do is regulation. This woman's just not very good at detail.
She's not very good at detail, which is why there were questions over some of the claims that she put in when she worked for one of the banks, and she had her parliamentary credit card removed for a period of time. She's not very good at many things.
Certainly not being Chancellor.
And to be in a position of Chancellor, we have to have someone who is giving confidence to the City of London and to other financial institutes around the world. She has not got that foundation to build confidence on.
She has no credibility just based on her own experience but also even her manner, her demeanour. I mean, they're sitting there in tears the other month next to the Prime Minister at PMQs. I don't care what personal things have happened. I mean, God, I've gone on air after miscarriages and things, and I'm sorry. I know people who've gone on air and after their mother has died and things. I mean, you either don't appear or front it out.
Or you front it out.
Front it out, like a lot, like most people actually have to do in their workplaces every single day. Actually, when things are going wrong at home. She's just not got any credibility. She will certainly have none if she does go ahead with what we are hearing maybe in the budget. Now, we can't trust any of the kites being flown right now. Justin Urquhart Stewart said, look, don't trust anything. These are Treasury sources saying, we're going to do this, going to do that. A lot of that is about testing the ground. How do people react? And the other thing is also about is basically, oh God, we're all expecting the budget to be absolutely awful in 4 weeks' time. And then when it's not, it's only a bit awful, not absolutely awful.
Everyone goes,
we'll all go,
wow,
thank goodness. I mean, what a great way of running a country, right?
It's a standard tactic, and not just Rachel Reeves, but every chancellor beforehand has tried that sort of thing. Make it sound really, really bad, and then come in as less bad.
But 2p on income tax. Look, a lot of people are saying, well, taxes will have to go up. People over there, the rich people, well, there aren't enough rich people and they'll leave the country. So, and anyone sensible is saying, if you want to seriously raise money, cut the debt, and not have to do massive public spending cuts. And the Prime Minister said there'll be no austerity. At the end of the day, austerity, like just not having a million young people on the dole. I mean, that's not austerity, that's just common sense. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to raise taxes on everyone.
Yeah, but again, that'll happen as well, because the one thing that has been missed under the headlines with the 2p sensational headline that gets the front pages and the sub-editors loving it, is the fact that there's also talk about not increasing the tax thresholds. So automatically that's going to bring other people into tax.
People on really quite average jobs paying the higher rate, not the highest, but the higher rate of tax, 40% on the extra income they earn. So you get a promotion and you get a pay rise. Which to deal with the fact that you're dealing with inflation, you still have got the hangover of the 11% inflation from a few years ago. You get a pay rise. Well, actually, you're only seeing about half.
But it's not just the 40%. It's the lower end tax rate, because that's going to bring people potentially on minimum wage into that. It's going to bring pensioners on pensions into that. So they're going to start paying tax and everything else. And that's where it's going to hit the lower paid people much harder than
people
another
who
penny.
are really just getting by. They really are working full time, maybe doing some extra hours actually, and just getting by and being hit again and again, and inflation still going up, mortgages, rent still high. Again, I don't know how much longer people can cope with it, and it is fascinating, is it not, that given the economic woes we're in and all the polling showing how negative and pessimistic people are about the future economically, that actually the migrant issue is still top of the list. Have we almost we just accepted the fact that we're just going to be in economic doldrums for the next 10 years?
I saw a very sad poll this morning that put the popularity of the Labour Party and what's going on at 1% below Prince Andrew.
Wow. Wow, that
puts it into context.
Yeah, I don't think it was
a particularly competent
1%
polling
above the
organisation.
Greens was pretty bad. Very interesting, actually. I was at an event last night, the Spectator magazine's Parliamentary of the Year Awards, and I had to accept an award on behalf of a politician because they didn't turn up. And Michael Gove, the editor of Spectator, I think was having a little bit of fun, because guess whose award I had to accept? Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader.
Well, of course, you're a closet member of the Green Party.
Obviously, I'm a massive Net Zero fan, but also, of course, he is the man who works for a hypnotherapist in Harley Street, hypnotising women into enhancing the size of their breasts. So maybe there were different reasons why I was chosen. I don't know. I may have touched on this in my thank you speech, but I did leave the award at the ceremony. So Zach Polanski, if you're watching, and I'm sure you're an avid listener to the show, Michael Gove's got your award, not me. He clearly didn't want it. But it was very interesting last night because Nigel Farage won, Politician of the Year. He was obviously going to win something, of course he was. But there was quite a lot of bitterness. He was not a happy man. I was sitting very, very close to him. Not a happy man with all the Conservatives things. Basically saying, we're going to win. And he went up on stage and he said, I've been told to be gracious, but you lot are all on. We're going to win. And the polls do seem to suggest this.
They do seem to suggest it. Now, we're a long time away from the general election. And at the moment, Nigel Farage can get away with soundbite statements. If he follows Labour's plan, he can continue that the whole way through. But people are going to start to hold reform to account much more. And he's going to have to get some more detail. And big things that are happening around the world. He doesn't even have a defence spokesman.
No, they're going to have detail. They're starting that obviously with some of their new MPs and things like that. But you mentioned Prince Andrew and on popularity. It's just emerged in the last 20 minutes or so that Prince Andrew could face a private prosecution over allegations of sex assault, corruption and misconduct in public office arising from the Virginia Giuffre scandal. This is the campaign group Republic, headed by Graham Smith. And he's basically, they're going to take the unprecedented step of instructing a law firm to investigate and, if necessary, commence law proceedings against the disgraced royal, looking into claims that he passed. And again, these were claims in documents coming out from America, in email from Prince Andrew to senior staff in Buckingham Palace, saying he'd asked his security officer, paid for by us, to look into Virginia Giuffre, gave her social security number. Information he should never had access to, given to him clearly by Jeffrey Epstein, convicted paedophile, and asking him to dig up dirt on her. Asking a police officer to commit a criminal act. Really? That looked looking very questionable. There's lots of question marks about his income. Where is all the money coming from that funds this lifestyle he leads? Big question marks about what he knew when of Epstein's proclivity for basically, let's call it what it is. Raping young teenage girls. That's what he was. And Graham Smith, the chief executive of the campaign group, if not us, then who? It's a devastating indictment on the UK's criminal justice system, police and politicians, not to mention the King and heir, that we must resort to a private prosecution.
But we also have to remember, our Royal Protection Officers are exceptionally well trained and trusted police officers.
Yeah.
And yes, principals will come along and ask advice of those that are there to protect them. But as a professional police officer, they'll turn around and say, sorry, boss, no.
Certainly you would expect that information to be passed on to a senior officer to I can't say no to Prince Andrew because I imagine he's not someone you can say no to, but can you tell him I can't do that?
No, his own close protection team, and I know a lot of people will be in there, the individual officers will have been robust enough to turn around and say, sorry boss, no. Straight. And knowing full well that if Prince Andrew tried to do what he always does, because he's not a very pleasant character, and blow it up, that the bosses would have covered him. And that officer would then very quickly go to the boss and say, look, just be aware.
Yeah, just so you know, this is what's happening.
I've said no to him, you know what he's like.
Well, we'll see the developments on that. Also, I mean, we've got to talk about all this huge spate of crimes we've got in just the last week. I mean, just in the last week, 4 particular big cases that have come to light involving migrants and crime. An Afghan refugee charged yesterday with a triple stabbing in Uxbridge, remanded in custody in court in the last few minutes after killing the dog walker Wayne Broadhurst. A bin man just walking by trying to help a man and his 14-year-old son who were being attacked allegedly by this Afghan refugee. We've got a Somali, a failed asylum seeker. He was jailed yesterday for a minimum of 25 years for stabbing in a completely unprovoked attack, a father of 3 to death in a bank, having lost his asylum claim. Last Friday, we had a Channel migrant found guilty of the unprovoked murder of Rhiannon White, a mother who worked at the asylum hotel. And last Friday also, of course, we had the Epping migrant, the sex attacker who was accidentally freed from Chelmsford prison, 2-day manhunt, and then he was deported. And now we found out yesterday 500 quid was given to him to basically stay quiet, stop causing a fuss and get on the plane. I mean, that's just in the last week. Every
day we're hearing of something new. And, you know, I've been in some nasty places around the world. When I go past hotels close to where I live, where there are asylum seekers in them, or see the groups of them out around the local shopping centres and stuff, you know, I feel nervous. I get twitchy. The hairs on the back of my neck stand out, and you know, you start to get alert, and start to feel as if you're back in an unsafe operational environment again.
And is that sort of something about the demeanour? Is it, you know, these young men are the fact that they're in a group? The young men, they're in groups. They tend to be wearing hoodies, and it tends to all be black a lot of the time. The clothing that they're wearing, you know, they seem to be well dressed. They don't seem to be behaving, you know, in the way that everyone else is behaving, and they stand out, and it's just it creates your little spidey, spidey instincts as a former senior military intelligence officer says this isn't right. This isn't right. It doesn't fit in. What could be happening here now? 99.99% of the time, nothing's happening. But it just doesn't fit in with everything else that's going on. Yeah. We should not be accepting these people into our society until they've been properly processed, properly vetted, and we know where they're from. And most should not pass any normal vetting. They should be sent back to where they came from. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where everyone is right now. Can we just ask also about what's been going on in South Korea? Whistle-stop tour of Southeast Asia by the US president. I mean, I can tell you what, though. His age was early 80s now, isn't he? I mean, that man has got the energy of a 25-year-old. In fact, more energy than most 25-year-olds you meet. Perhaps quite extraordinary. But he met, obviously, lots of different leaders with lots of deals done, South Korea trade deal, and things that we perhaps expected were going to be on the cards after his trade tariff war. But he also met with the Chinese President Xi Jinping at the airport on the way out. He gave the meeting a 12 out of 10. When they stood side by side for the cameras, Trump did all the talking. Xi Jinping, I mean, there was the body language. I saw the whole thing. Oh. What do you make of this, and what do you make of what may or may not come out of it? Well, you know, obviously anything that comes out of it's being done by the diplomats in the background, so it's not between those two. But the body language that there was when Trump was standing there, and Xi deliberately made Trump stand there by himself, and you could see Trump getting nervous, and then when he came in, Trump was trying to be all bonhomie and pat him on the back and everything else, and was saying positive things, and Xi Jinping wasn't even looking at him. He was just. But you've got Trump. You've got one president who absolutely loves, free flowing, bit of banter, just talking. I mean, just again, just free flowing on everything, on major policy issues. And then you've got someone who is absolutely, he sticks to his. But he was turning his back on him. He was not talking to him. He was talking to his interpreter, someone else. When you look at things from a cultural perspective, and you go to culture in Southeast Asia and you're doing business, it's all very respectful. There was zero respect being shown by Xi Jinping to Donald Trump, and actually a lot of those cultural niceties are absolutely
they're critical. They're absolutely critical, and it's the sort of thing that sets the tone for everything that's going on. So 12 out of 10. No. It was not even 1 out of 10.
Very interesting. Interesting to hear that. Thank you very much indeed. 11:21 is the time now. We're going to take a quick break. Don't forget also, just to remind you, at about midday we're going to be talking to Joe Bartosh and Rob Jessel, and they're the authors of a brilliant new book called Pornocracy. It's out this week. I've been talking about that book since I read it a few months ago in an advance copy, and said, Joe and Rob, you have to come on the show and talk about it. I was absolutely gobsmacked and blown away by it. I talked about it actually when I interviewed Bonnie Blue, the porn star who does just horrific things, and is just feel so sorry for this woman, what she's chosen to do. I don't care how much money you're making, it's just so demeaning. But actually how the porn that our young people are seeing now, men and women, boys and girls, is so distorting their brains, so distorting their lives, their attitudes. We are in for a whole heap of trouble. You absolutely need to listen to this interview. I cannot stress strongly how much you are going to be horrified by what you hear, but it is a wake-up call to everyone, but particularly to every mum and every dad, about what the hell is out there and how it's distorting your child's brain. We're going to talk about that coming up after midday. I want to get to your calls though on all the topics we're talking about, in particular Rachel Reeves. Should she have to go? Should she have to resign? Whether or not she got this licence that she needed to rent out her home from the local council, or whether or not she should resign over, well, the possibility, it looks very likely, we are going to see breaching of the Labour manifesto in terms of those promises not to raise our taxes, because let's face it, that's what they're going to do. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So 344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
My friend was murdered last year up on the high street. Girl I know was murdered in Southall Park.
What they're not probably planning to do is reduce benefits in any shape or form. And they seem to think that you can go on taxing ordinary hard-working people as well as the so-called rich. On and on and on, tax. And that doesn't have an effect on the whole economy, a negative effect, if you're just spending on welfare and other...
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get to your phone calls. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed, I mean, we had an extraordinary call yesterday from Sarah, who called in, frankly, out of desperation about the huge number of stabbings and migrant attacks and what has happened to her family members and friends of hers in recent years, and how terrified she is to even walk on the streets without a man with her, because she simply does not feel safe after what's happened to so many people that she knows. And that tweet, which we put out, got retweeted by Elon Musk, of course, who's spoken a lot about grooming gangs and other issues on the streets in this country, and he just put the words "enough is enough" on the top of that tweet, and that has had, I kid you not, 20 million views. 20 million views. Sarah, thank you. I'm hoping you're still listening. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for telling us your story. We so appreciate you taking the time, and it was an incredibly heartbreaking call. It really was, and I think it really touched an awful lot of people. So thank you for that. Let's go straight to the phone lines now and talk about Rachel Reeves. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Rudy is on the line. He's in Bristol. And Rudy, we couldn't get you last hour because things got a bit busy. But Rudy, what do you want to say about Rachel Reeves? Should she go? And if so, why?
Well, she should go, and so should Angela Rayner, really. They should all be done, and I'll tell you why. Have you ever been stopped or been questioning something and you've been fined or whatever, and you say, oh, I didn't know,
yeah.
And they turn around and say, ignorance is not an excuse,
yeah.
And you still get done. So why should it be any different with this situation? You know?
Yeah, so she should be fined, yeah.
Yeah, she should. But
well, I mean, to be fair, Angela Rayner, I mean, she lost her job.
For it. If it's a criminal act, then she should also have a criminal record, you know, because they give you even like is on your criminal record what they say about this so-called hate speech, and it's not really a thing, but it goes on your record. So why is this any different?
There is an argument also. We say my argument was like, God, how would you know about this? Well, clearly she did know about it. She campaigned for it in Leeds in her constituency. She's supposed to know this level of detail, even though she doesn't know where she worked and for how long and what job she did in the past. So she's not a details girl. But in a way, it tells us, you know, that these laws, these rules, there are too many laws and rules that people haven't got a chance of knowing about.
Because but you say that, Julia, right? You say that, Julia, but how many times, right, have you complained about something and they say, oh, I'm terribly sorry, that's in your contract. Oh, well, I didn't know about that, you know. So when she chose those people to do the work for her, it's up to her to make sure that she's got the right company and they know what they're doing. Yeah. Like I said, ignorance is no excuse.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the fact that she of all people, having campaigned for this sort of selective licensing for residential properties being rented out, that she knew of the existence of that. So you'd think that she would have actually done just a little Google. Southwark Council, my local council, do you have, selective licensing? Yeah, because I looked it up and it's very clear on the website they do. But you'd need to know to look it up, I think. But she did know.
There's a pattern here, Julia, with her. So she knew. She was just pulling a fast one like she did with her CV. There's a whole pattern with this woman of all these things, you know. You can think, oh, once maybe. But this is a continual thing with them and the other members of the party, of the Labour Party, where they are trying to always break the rules and then say, oh, well, I'm not going to do nothing about that. But had it been the other way round, then that would have been a different story. Like, for example, when they're going on about Nigel Farage's colleague Sarah, right, for example. And yet, what has David Lammy done? He's called us Nazis for voting for Brexit. He's made all these accusations. The same with Diane Abbott and stuff. But that's okay because it's not an alternative party.
Yeah, no, you're right. Exactly. I mean, there is an element with all of these things where, you know, what would you have said in response? Like, for instance, people calling for David Lammy to go as Justice Secretary because of the release from Chelmsford Prison of the Epping migrant attacker. And you just think, well, he can't be responsible for every single person mistakenly released. But you know damn well he would have called for the Justice Secretary, who was a Tory, to have gone. So you think that Rachel Reeves, she's hung herself out. She's been given so much rope. But the reality is, you know as well as I do, Prime Minister doesn't want to lose her because he wants her to deliver this horrific budget we're going to get in a month's time, and she can take the blame for it. That's what he wants.
But also the fact is, with that budget, they keep blaming the Tories. We were in a 20 billion black hole, but they've made it over a 50 billion black hole. So they can't blame the past, you know. And I guarantee they will do absolutely everything in order to destroy small businesses with more tax, and eventually people won't want to know. People will say, I'm not working anymore because it's not worth me to work.
And we've already seen that with some higher earners, and even like the NHS going, you know, the amount of money you're going to be taking out of my pocket and I'm not allowed to put it in my pension scheme and things, then it's simply not worth my while to go to work anymore. They just genuinely, they just don't get it. Rudy, thank you. I'm so glad we got you on there. Thank you very much indeed. David is in Kent. David, you want to talk about what's going on with Rachel Reeves and breaking housing law. Tell us what you want to say.
Well, it's staggering really from Rachel from accounts. She said she can't rely on her letting agent. It's her responsibility here and no one else's. I am the landlord in Southwark and Lewisham.
And Southwark is the borough where she was renting out her home.
That's correct. I've had to pay £900 each on each of my properties in Southwark and £640 in Lewisham on each property I let. And by the way, it's only...
Sorry, can I clarify? So this licence costs £900?
It's £900 if you don't pay on the early bird thing. Otherwise, you get a discount. I think it's about 25% discount if you pay on the early bird scheme. And in Lewisham, it's £640. And it's only London. It's only Labour boroughs, by the way, that have whole borough selective licensing schemes. It basically all it does is give a load of box tickers in local authorities jobs, and they get to then fine landlords for increasingly minor infringements, whilst leaving the real rogue.
Thank you.
Landlords in the
so when people are still living in, you know, mould-infested, damp properties and they do nothing about it, and by the way, often council properties and housing association properties that we've seen exposed in recent months, but but someone who didn't have, you know, I don't know, the fire extinguisher exactly the right angle in the hallway, and then they'll get fined for it.
It's that kind of thing, that's right. And the real rogue landlords in the shadows, they're not really going after them. They're continuing to let death trap properties to often illegal migrants who may be also working for them and who can be relied upon to stay quiet. The money that we're all charged as landlords, and in Southwark it's the whole borough, in Lewisham next door it's 90% of the borough, that money just basically goes straight on to rents. And I should say the fine, by the way, for some of this non-compliance is up to £30,000, including also rent repayment orders. So I'm interested to see whether Southwark will let her off. And also, perhaps you guys can get onto Southwark and ask them how many landlords they have fined and how much, whilst this scheme's been in operation, which has been about 18 months. Next door in Lewisham is about 12 months.
Do you think there's any excuse for her not knowing? I mean, you said, you know, you rent out multiple properties, but you know, she's obviously not renting out properties. She's moving into the you know, 11 Downing Street or 10 Downing Street flat, and she's renting out her property. She went to a letting agency. I would have a lot of sympathy for someone going, well, why would I even think that this was a thing? Apart from the fact that she's campaigned for this in her own constituency in Leeds, so she would know about it. It's a thing you'd think you might Google this one and find out.
Well, it's a bit of sympathy, but apart from the fact she's a Chancellor Strecker.
Small point worth making.
I mean, in the case of when Lewisham introduced theirs, I only found out about it because I happened to be driving in Lewisham and see it on the back of the bus side. Lewisham never contacted me, despite knowing that I let the property out because it's different on the council. I've got a leasehold property, so they should know.
Wait a minute. Do they want people to buy the licences, or do they want people to not get the licences and be fined because they make more money that way?
They make a lot of money from money from both, and that's the intention here. It's a money-making scheme, and all it is finding, as I say, landlords for minor infractions, whilst the real bad landlords just go along unhindered because they don't seem to have any intelligence-based approach to deal with finding out and going after those rogue landlords. And of course, as I said, their tenants are never going to bobble them because they have a vested interest in not doing so.
Absolutely. David, fantastic call. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate that. Philip Ingram, I mean, look, I think David and Rudy have both nailed it there. I mean, you know, she hasn't got a leg to stand on, has she?
Well, she hasn't. And the thing that David said was it applies to the whole of Southwark. So it's not like some of the other areas where it only applies to different wards in different ways.
I mean, if it applies to 100% of properties in 100% of the area, I'm not sure that's selective.
Well,
that's everyone, isn't it?
It is in that particular area. It's selected between different councils. So she's got even less of a leg to stand on. I'm sorry, she's toast now. She has to go. There's no.
Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0244 499 1000. 11:36 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking about this spate of migrant crimes and the latest details that are emerging, and paying migrants to get on planes when they've got no right to be here. It sticks in the craw. 500 quid. The Epping sex offender got. It could have been up to 2,000. You was robbed, mate. Come back and try again, as I'm sure you will. But is that actually money well spent? We'll talk to the former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:39 is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Let's go straight to Tony Smith, my next guest. He's the former head of UK Border Force, big friend of the show, and joins us right now to talk about, well, this horrific spate of migrant assaults and crimes that we've now become horribly aware of, 4 in just the last few days that have hit the front page headlines. Tony Smith, thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure, Julia.
I wish the topic we were talking about was a pleasure. I'd love one day you come on air. I'd probably have to leave my job. What else would we talk about? And I said, Tony, isn't this amazing? We've got no more boats coming in, no more migrants, got no illegal arrivals committing crime, and they've all been sent home. And what a great day. Wouldn't that be a wonderful interview to do?
Yeah, and if I got back my old job, Julia, I'd hire you as my communications secretary to tell the great British public about all the successes.
It would be a joy. It would be a joy.
About all the failures that we talk about every week.
Well, I'm just going to go through really quickly. Afghan refugee charged and remanded in custody with the triple stabbing in Uxbridge. The dog walker, Wayne Broadhurst, he's left dead. Another man, his 14-year-old son, stabbed as well. Yesterday, Somali failed asylum seeker jailed for a minimum of 25 years for stabbing a father of 3 to death in a bank in a random attack. On Friday, we had the Channel migrant found guilty of the unprovoked murder of Rhiannon White, a mother who worked at his asylum hotel. And on Friday, of course, we had the Epping migrant sex attacker accidentally freed, manhunt for 2 days, deported. And now we find out, what a joy, that we, with our hard-earned money, have paid that man, Hadish Gabati, 500 quid to leave the country. What do you make of all those stories?
Well, firstly, I'm glad that this is all coming in the public domain. That's really important because, in my experience, this has been happening for a long time now. Julia, we've had criminals coming into this country illegally and perpetrating crimes, and it hasn't received this degree of media attention that it is now. But I would say I have detected a significant increase in serious crimes being perpetrated by illegal entrants, not just boat arrivals, but lorry arrivals, even people that have come in and claimed asylum by other means and are in the immigration system and go on to perpetrate
And you
crimes.
think it's actually, there is, as far as you're aware, it's not just that we're talking about them more, they're on the front page of the newspapers, it's that there are actually more of these crimes.
I am very close to my former colleagues in the border force, and they will tell you, if they were allowed to, that yes, we are now getting alerts from the police constantly about people that have been arrested who are in the immigration system, usually as illegal entrant asylum seekers, who are committing serious crimes.
And is that because we've got more of those people and it's grown conventionally, or are we getting a different kind of illegal migrant arrival, not just someone who, admittedly here illegal, we don't want them either, but an economic migrant who wants a better life and to get here and then bring his it's usually a man, bring his family over, but otherwise does just want to make a new life, as opposed to people who are dangerous criminals arriving here?
There are more dangerous criminals arriving here, I'm afraid, Julia. I wouldn't say all of them are. Of course they're not. Yeah. There are more amongst them than I've ever known in the past, and that is evidenced by the number of cases of people that are being arrested for very serious offences after they get here. So we've got a real problem on our hands here with criminals entering our country illegally. We don't have time to properly screen and vet them. We can't detain them because they claim asylum, and they are being released into communities and perpetrating crime, serious crime. A real problem for us, Julia. We really need to do something.
And I mean, it's bad enough having a huge number of young men arriving and putting in asylum hotels or local housing, just down the road from a secondary school or a primary school, who apparently have attitudes towards women, which, I mean, I'm sorry, they're medieval. That's what they are from large parts of the world, where they just consider, well, she's out, she's a girl and she's out, she's not covered up and she's not with a man, therefore she's fair game. I mean, that is a big enough issue, and the sex assaults we've seen on women and girls. But even more worrying, and I'm afraid it is more worrying, is these random murders. I mean, just literally, I'm angry I didn't get my asylum claim through. I'm going to just kill a random father of 3 and a bank and then just walk away as if nothing has happened. This is terrifying.
Yes, it is terrifying. And as you say, these are not just offences against women and girls. These are serious crimes. We're seeing murders, stabbings regularly now. And increasingly, these offences are being perpetrated by people who are not lawfully in this country. They are entitled to be here on bail, on immigration bail, but they are stuck in this interminable legal system that we've created, where it's possible to come to our shores, claim asylum, get bail and stay here, well, for a very, very long time while we go through this process, considering your application, potentially granting it 60% of the time, and even those that we refuse, rarely removing them because they go to an immigration tribunal, who will usually find a reason why they should be allowed to stay on grounds of human rights. So we've really got to tackle our laws and make sure that we can detain people on arrival if they haven't got documents and remove them from the territory as illegal entrants, and not offer them all these forms of protection because it is harming our community.
Come back to the removals, because we're constantly told we can't. I mean, Nigel Farage, the Reform leader in Parliament, moved a 10-minute rule motion yesterday about, we should leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We can have a vote on that. This is Stopping Us Act. Germany's in the European Convention on Human Rights. They seem to be able to get rid of people. Why can we not remove these people? Is it a lack of deals? Is it because of Brexit, as we're told? Why not?
It's nothing to do with Brexit, I can tell you that. It's to do with the fact that primarily our legal framework is very, very generous to the migrant. It enables you to make an application for asylum, human rights, modern slavery, simultaneously or consequentially, as you wish.
Right.
You can get a lawyer which will take you into a process with a 54-week gap, delay now in MOJ, in immigration tribunals. So basically, we've got an interminable process that allows people to stay here, and we can only detain people, Julia, if there is a realistic prospect of removal. We have got the power to detain, but if there is no realistic prospect of removal, an immigration judge will grant bail, and it will usually be for a very, very long time. That's
and that was the issue we had when we did have detention camps and but actually, the human rights lawyer said, the conditions aren't, they're not a 4-star hotel, so they'll have to be released. But also, these people can't. This is supposed to be held for a few days or a few weeks. They can't be held here for months or years, and it's taking years, so they have to go. You also mentioned, and in passing, and this is something that is often mentioned by those who campaign on behalf of these people's right to be here, that the majority of these people do end up getting granted asylum and the right to stay, and we know one of those key cases, the Afghan refugee who has been charged, obviously he was entitled to a fair trial over the triple stabbing in Uxbridge that left Wayne Broadhurst dead, that he arrived in a lorry in 2020, we understand from the authorities, was granted asylum in 2022, so he did have the right to stay. When these people are granted, should we therefore assume that they are genuine asylum seekers, or, as you've explained before, but for people who've not heard your explanations, what else is actually going on when these people are granted the right to stay?
So I think the critical point is where they've come from, Julia. And if you look at refugee policy, generally speaking, if there were an invasion or a war or some major event in Europe, you would normally flee to the next available country. That's where you would go to. That's where UNHCR camps are. That's what you would expect.
Syrians in Turkey, etc., etc.
Yeah, and there are very good people working in UNHCR camps looking after those people who are genuine refugees. But what's happened is that people are crossing multiple borders to a destination of choice, quite often the UK, and they are not in immediate fear of persecution, are they, any longer? So that's what we said in the Illegal Migration Act. If you are coming from France on a boat, you should not avail yourself of asylum protection in this country. You could have claimed asylum, so you are not going to be admitted into our asylum system. And if we cannot send you back to the country you came from, France, because they won't have you, or we cannot send you back to your source country because you say you fear refoulement there or you refusal there, persecution there, we will send you to a third country, and we had that deal with Rwanda.
Okay, but why are we? But when we are granting, when the system, and it's under the Tories as well, and under Labour now, they're going through more. They're actually granting a lot of these people asylum, and so we're told, why are we calling these people illegal migrants? They're asylum seekers. The majority of them get it in the end, and if they don't, they get it on appeal. But does that mean that they are legitimate? And frankly, we should be a bit more welcoming.
Well, they're illegal entrants first and foremost, and I see a number of commentators say they're not illegal to claim asylum. It's not illegal to claim it. They are illegal entrants. They're served with notice of illegal entry. They're liable to detention and removal, but we do allow them to claim asylum here. Yeah. The test then becomes, can we send you back to Afghanistan? Do you really fear persecution there? It's their word against ours, Julia. And then, we have to provide evidence that we think you will not.
And we often don't have that. So the default is that they eventually get granted asylum.
The majority do, Julia, and even in some of these countries, if they're refused asylum, it's very, very hard to get them back to places
and then they're given indefinite leave to remain either way. So we end up with these people anyway.
Limited or indefinite leave to remain, so they get to stay. So you've got to stop them coming. Now, we do stop them coming by legitimate means. That's why we've got Border Force in France, checking passports, airline liaison officers all around the world, stopping forged passports, getting on. We can't stop them on the French beaches, so we must focus on removals again. That's the only other way.
Although, of course, the ones we've removed to France, because one in, one out, and then we came back in again. He apparently is still here, and reports that actually more migrants who we've returned to France, the few we've got over there, was it 42? Hopefully a few more now, are all still trying to come back here because, of course, they don't get housed as nicely there as they do here. We live in a mad world. Tony Smith, thank you for joining us, being a voice of reason, former head of the UK Border Force. Philip Ingram was listening to all that, a former senior military intelligence officer. I mean, it's so frustrating, isn't it?
It shows just what an utter mess it is. And actually, no matter how critical we can be of the Rwanda scheme, it was one path to potentially get us out of that mess. It was very small. A lot more needed to happen to it, but it was a start. and there's nothing there at the minute, and it's just getting worse.
Absolutely. Well, coming up next, we're going to be talking about net zero. The net zero agenda, according to Boris Johnson, shouldn't be abandoned by Kemi Badenoch. He's now the third former Tory Prime Minister to criticise Kemi Badenoch, saying she's dropping net zero targets for 2050. Why is he wrong? We'll talk to Harry Wilkinson of the Global Warming Policy Foundation up next. This is Talk.
What they're not probably planning to do is reduce benefits in any shape or form. And they seem to think that you can go on taxing ordinary hard-working people as well as the so-called rich. On and on and on, tax, 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 tax. And that doesn't have an effect on the whole economy, a negative effect if you're just spending on welfare and other non-growth related areas. This is absolutely a doom spiral.
My friend was murdered last
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. So good morning to you. Sorry, 11:54 is the time. Let's get straight to my next guest, Harry Wilkinson. He's Head of Policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation and joins us now. Harry, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I want to talk to you about Boris Johnson becoming the third former Tory Prime Minister to criticise Kemi Badenoch for dropping net zero policies, following on from John Major and Theresa May, two obviously brilliant Prime Ministers, in the past. But they're basically saying, you know, Boris Johnson, you can't win the next election by bashing the green agenda. Just how wrong is he about that?
He's incredibly wrong. He's reminded us, has he not, of his characteristic humility. This is the man whose government thought it was appropriate to tell us what cars we could drive, what boilers we could install in our homes. And he's presenting a false dichotomy. This isn't about choosing between dealing with climate change and rejecting it completely. This is about rejecting his authoritarian net zero agenda, which impoverished people, which was responsible for thousands of people losing their jobs in energy-intensive industries like the refineries in Grangemouth, like the refinery in Lynmouth, like the potteries near Sheffield and Stoke. This is a disastrous agenda, and it's one that has always been based on compulsion and not getting energy prices down, which actually, as Claire Coutinho has pointed out, is a much better way to drive decarbonisation, because people will adopt the electrification of all sorts of things if you have cheap electricity. We don't have cheap electricity, we have the most expensive.
Yeah, I mean, again, certainly for manufacturing, 4 times the price in America. And again, they'll push this big AI agenda. You ain't going to be able to be successful in AI if you can't actually afford energy to run AI. And it is a very, very energy-intensive form of technology. But this is the thing, and I think a lot of people forget about it. It's supposed to be, net zero is about being cuddly and nice and caring about the planet and polar bears and all of this. But actually, it's about impoverishing us, and it's about controlling us, and increasingly we're seeing that with not just Labour policies, Tory policies as were, Green policies, Liberal policies, completely signed up to this agenda of what kind of car you can drive, how much it's going to cost you to park. Every time I park my diesel car, it's like, and you're going to get an extra penalty. It's £4 to park plus 60 quid or whatever it is. I'm exaggerating, because you're a bad person. You've got a diesel car. You can almost sort of hear it in the tone. Where you can drive, they want to control whether you can go on holiday or not, what kind of home you can have, whether you can even sell your home. The control factors are huge, and they are contained within the documents to get us to net zero. People always think that people like me are making this stuff up. The policy people have said it's going to require massive changes in our lifestyle, which they'll have to force on us.
Well, we've been having what you could see as a fake debate about net zero in this country. It is the law of the land. It is the law of the land. So this means that until we scrap the Climate Change Act, it doesn't matter what you or I think.
Yeah.
We will not be able to do carbon-intensive activities in the future by 2050.
Well, and you can't
We're living
build
on
anything.
borrowed times.
But you can't build
in terms
anything.
of the lifestyles that we lead. So it's an absolutely urgent priority to escape this net zero straitjacket, to repeal the Climate Change Act, possibly the European Convention on Human Rights as well, because we saw a case in Switzerland where a bunch of Swiss grannies said we were going to be unfairly harmed by climate change. Therefore, the Swiss government had to implement carbon reduction policies regardless of what people thought. So this is an agenda which has huge both legislative and institutional underpinning. And even if Boris may not have approved of all these measures, he didn't stop the civil servants running rampant in terms of the restrictions that they were proposing, the taxes that they were proposing on ordinary people. And that has continued quite clearly under Ed Miliband, who's embraced this agenda wholeheartedly. It really frustrates me to hear these Green Tories talking about this would be popular or unpopular. This is about what's right for the country, and clearly having cheap energy is absolutely fundamental to our future success. That doesn't have to be completely apart from decarbonising if we use technologies like nuclear.
Exactly. It is genuinely so painful, and the reality check that people have to have about how much is going to involve in impoverishing us and controlling our lives. And there has never been an economy that is successful without cheap and affordable and plentiful energy. It's really that simple. Harry Wilkinson, always so good to talk to the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Guess what, Boris? You're wrong about something else, along with John Major and, of course, Theresa May. Up next, we're going to be talking about pornocracy. Find out what that's about next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or on your connected device, it's always great to have your company. I really, really appreciate you joining me. In just a couple of moments, I'm going to be speaking to the authors of a brilliant and frankly terrifying new book called Pornocracy. It's a deep dive into how the multi-billion-dollar pornography industry has basically, completely and utterly gripped a chokehold onto our young people and indeed our whole society, and the huge implications of that. You do not want to miss this interview. Also coming up later in the hour, we're going to be talking more about Rachel Reeves. She has broken the law, renting out her family home without getting a licence since she became Chancellor. The law is very clear. She campaigned for and supported the law in her Leeds constituency, but apparently didn't know anything about it in Southwark, where her family home was. She's written to the Prime Minister. She's referred herself to the ethics advisor. He says there's nothing more to be done. But should she be fined? Should she be prosecuted? Should she lose her job? Or should she lose her job for breaking, as many expect she will do in a month's time, her manifesto commitments not to raise either national insurance, income tax or VAT on us at the budget? Well, that's what we're told we're going to see. So should she go for that? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Don't forget to get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Got lots of texts and tweets coming in on that as well. So far, you're not big fans, it's got to be said. Also going to be talking about why Christians in Britain do not enjoy free speech anymore. This is according to a man who claims he was discriminated against when he missed out on a job because his views on homosexuality were regarded as unacceptable. This is Felix Ngoli. He applied to be a mental health support worker back in 2022. He was offered the role. However, the offer was withdrawn after bosses discovered that he had called homosexuality and same-sex marriage sins. Now, you or I may not agree with those views, but isn't he entitled to hold those views in a free country? Plus, we're going to talk about Donald Trump and his trade talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping, which he described as amazing and gave them 12 out of 10. But will they turn out to be? All that coming up, so much more besides, including your calls. As I say, the number to call 0344 499 1000 to get in touch and have your say. And I'm very much hoping you want to call in and have your say on what my next two guests are going to talk about. Joining me in the studio, I'm delighted to say, are the authors Joe Bartosz and Robert Jessel. Great to get you in the studio. They are the authors of a brand new book out this week called Pornocracy. Very, very good afternoon to you both.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining us. Now, my poor audience will have heard me, I've got to be honest with you, wittering on about this book a number of times. It certainly came up when I interviewed Bonnie Blue, who is, I'm saying porn actress. I mean, just, you're just basically a prostitute earning a lot of money at this point when you're doing what she does. And the book, I have to say, had the most profound effect on me. I read it as a preview copy and it absolutely blew me away and frankly terrified the living daylights out of me. Joe, explain to people who obviously wouldn't have had a chance to read the book yet because it's not out for another day, what your book is actually about and why we should be really, really worried.
Yeah, so essentially what we've seen over the past, over my lifetime is the biggest social shift. And we've had such a profound change in how people relate to one another and how they construct their sexuality, and that is down to pornography. And we've even seen sort of, further down the line, changes in the laws with the normalisation of things like trans identities, which are straight out of pornography. Now, when it comes to politicians, they seem very reluctant to address this issue, but parents, I think, are absolutely crying out for some sort of moral guidance. Actually, there needs to be, we need to actually have a firm moral line on this, and not just sort of. And
a lot of the problems with this, and I've said this on air so many times, and Martin Daubney actually used to be editor of Loaded, and he's done an interesting documentary on this as well. And there's been a lot of polling which you've done, and polling that you referred to in the book, Robert, a lot of people are just completely and utterly unaware of what is out there. Now, we know from polls, most people look at pornography, certainly most men and large percentages of women do. And what is available online, with or without your logging in your VPN or whatever, is very different from the pornography that people might have been seeing certainly 30 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, perhaps even 5 years ago, in terms of the extreme nature of it, the violence, the whole, I don't know, the whole setup of pornography now. It is not a man and a woman, or two men or two women having sex with each other in a consensual way. That's virtually disappeared from porn. So, okay, bearing in mind the time of day, but never. Can you give us an idea of just how out of touch lots of particularly parents are of what their teenagers are seeing?
I think the best way to describe it is some of the most extreme and violent sexual acts that have ever been recorded on a camera now. They are now available in infinite quantities, and they are being viewed by children as young as 11 or 10. I think the average age of first viewing is between 11 and 13. Certainly,
if that doesn't break your heart.
Sure. And the most worrying thing about this is not even the extremity of content. It's what it's doing to people's brains, especially the young. What worried me most about researching and writing this book was to find out that that it's actually making people fall in love with porn. That's the nature of
sort of addiction.
Yes, but the particular nature of porn. You talk about watching porn, and unfortunately, we have to be very, very clear about language here. And I don't like to use sexual language, but we're not talking about people sitting down to watch porn with popcorn. We're talking about people sitting down in front of the computer, being in an aroused state for a very, very long time, sometimes for hours, and masturbating to it. And this process cements what you see in the brain.
It's affecting the people's brains. So it's not just sort of, they're looking at pornography, they're seeing stuff which perhaps most people would not regard as being in the normal range of sexual behaviour. But particularly young people, and this is, Joe, where it becomes a real issue, is, I can remember, talking to other mums, of teenage girls, what is normal, what is not normal, and certainly schools being very wary of, like, oh, we don't want to be judgy. Oh, we really need to start being judgy. And, and the need for parents to sit down and go, no, a boy putting his hands around your throat and choking you to unconsciousness, or in fact putting his hands around your throat at all, is not, no, I'm going to use the word, normal. Women apparently absolutely loving having violent anal sex. No, not normal. Slapping, spitting, rape fantasy stuff, but violence routinely. Not normal, not what turns most women on, and I don't believe it's what turns most men on. And this is one of the issues, because teenage boys and girls, this is what they're seeing. The girls think that's what the boys want. The boys think that's what the girls want. It becomes normalised. That's terrifying.
It is. I mean, we know that nearly 40% of young women have experienced sexual choking. I know that used to be such a niche practice.
OK, so let's parents right now listening to this, well, not my little girl, not my lovely little son, that's what they think is normal now.
Yeah, I mean, there was one sort of episode that we featured in the book, which was a man who he thought he was doing what his partner wanted, and then it was only later when he went back and asked her if she actually wanted to be choked during sex that he discovered she didn't, and she was doing it to please him. She was putting up with it to please him, and those sort of breakdowns in communication are now quite normal because of pornography. And we're also seeing a hardening of sexist attitudes. All this nonsense around Andrew Tate and the sort of panic around the manosphere, yeah, it's concerning, but actually the sort of toxic waste dump upon which it sits, pornography, is absolutely inseparable. And we're seeing, like, with Generation Z, only 42% now realise that rape within marriage is a crime. They think that being married is automatic consent. Now that compares to
at any time.
Yes, yeah. And that compares to 87% of boomers. So something clearly has happened between those generations.
And this is not just the message they're getting, is it, Rob? This is you were touching on this. It's how it's affecting people's brains. So we know, it's well established. If you take drugs and the hit, if once you've tried heroin, that's it. The rest of your life is spent chasing that first hit. And other drugs, we know that people get the hits from cigarettes, from alcohol, from gambling. We know that addiction. No, but that this is the next one. But we're talking about people having a porn addiction, day in, day out, and this is not just a few oddballs sitting in their mum's basement.
No. No, porn is something that biologists call a super stimulus. It doesn't exist in nature. It's a bit like refined sugar. We're all getting fat because we weren't designed to get that much calories in one go. As mammals, we obviously have a very, very high sex drive. But in the wild, say, there's only so much sex to go around. Now there is a cornucopia of porn, and it's just a click away. You can do it
all day,
anonymously.
every
you can
day.
do it guilt-free. It doesn't cost you anything. No one knows that you're doing it. And when human males, especially, are presented with this, they naturally go towards it. As I say, they're falling in love with porn, falling out of love with their partners, because porn is a pathway. If you watch a certain type of porn, you will eventually become bored with it, and that's why the pipeline is invariably towards more and more.
So a man and a woman just having normal everyday sex. That won't do anything. It's literally not going to do anything.
Eventually it will pull.
And then and this is where we get into Joe, and this, you touched on this in the book about we go to more extreme stuff.
Yeah.
And worse than what we're talking about here. And I'm sorry, by the way, if this is an uncomfortable conversation, people, but again, we need to talk about this stuff. We really do, because this is what people are seeing. This is what, your other half may be seeing, your children are seeing, other family members, other people you meet in the street, okay? We need to be honest about this stuff and not brush it under the carpet. But actually, there was this idea, wasn't there, that sort of men looking at child porn, let's call it what it is, images of rape of children. It's not, children can't partake in pornography because they're children. But those images, well, if a man's looking at that stuff, or a woman's looking at that stuff, at least they're not doing it to a child. A child isn't actually being hurt. But of course, a child is being hurt because that image is being replayed millions and millions of times for the rest of their lives. But there was the idea that, well, you could have all this sort of these AI images of children. But again, that's okay because they're not real, and therefore men who have those horrific interests, they're not hurting real children. The evidence actually suggests the exact opposite.
Yes, yeah, it's so porn functions as like a permission-giving script, if you like. So if you see it in pornography, you are more likely, it's not a case of monkey see, monkey do, but you are more likely to think that's acceptable.
It normalises
it.
Yeah.
So, and it's well known that, for example, with men who are found to have child sex dolls, actually they always have images of child abuse as well. And what's really concerning...
So they can we just go back to the child, because we live normal lives, most of us. Talk us through what a child sex doll is.
Oh, well, literally a silicone rubber doll that men ejaculate into. They're sort of banned in the UK, but ever so often
people
get
hold. Right, okay.
Even Temu, I think, was selling them for a while. They're very common.
Along with the sandals and the kitchenware. Lovely.
Yeah, really, really unpleasant.
Again, it's just become normalised.
Yes. And also it's become very normalised for children to be coerced into taking photos of themselves. So the Internet Watch Foundation found that 92% of the images that they remove of child sexual abuse are self-generated. So they're either sort of, there's a paedophile at the other end of the wire, basically instructing them what to do.
And some of them will think that it's, I'm a 14-year-old girl, it's another 14-year-old boy, and some of them, of course, are being basically coerced into it, aren't they?
And of course, they think it's normal because that's what society tells them, that's what pornography tells them. So, yeah.
It's really funny, I think, I'm from probably an older generation than both of you, but, we didn't have mobile phones until I was, I think, in my late 20s. The idea that you just take pictures of any part of your body and send them to someone seems so utterly mad and bizarre to me, but completely and utterly the norm for our teenagers and probably people in their 20s too.
And of course that is that's changing fast with the arrival of Gen AI. You don't need to solicit pictures of the person that you want to see.
You can make them
naked. You can make them.
And we've seen that with celebrities, but it's happening to ordinary people as well.
Yes, I mean, all you need is a picture either taken surreptitiously or taken from somebody's Instagram or LinkedIn. You can not only, in the olden days you might stitch a head on to a porn actress's body. Now you can make hyper-realistic moving image porn of anyone. And the really scary thing about this is, in schools, this will be the new way to bully kids. If there's a girl you don't like, you can make
she turns you down.
Turns you down. You can make some AI porn of her at breakfast, share it around the school at a mid-morning break, and by lunchtime the whole school has seen it, and it will ruin lives. And we have already seen suicides because of this.
I mean, absolutely heartbreaking what our kids are having to go through with this. I mean, but the thing is, there is a societal issue. It's not just a concern for parents, not just a concern about our youngsters, because it is interesting that while we've got this sort of pornification of our society, this everything sexual. I mean, I'm always railing against. I've worn plenty of miniskirts in my time. I'm not in no way a prude, but the pornification of certainly of the pop industry and in everything, every celebrity. I mean, even the multi-millionaires, the very successful ones, the Beyoncés, basically, the Taylor Swifts, they got half their bodies out. The normalisation of women turning up to a Hollywood premiere basically in underwear, and again, we're just pornifying everything. At what point we just turn up naked? Let's just not even bother anymore with the clothes. But this is all being normalised. But there is another much deeper, not much more worrying concern about how this is affecting how people interact with each other and their ability to form in any way, Joe, a normal romantic physical relationship if their expectations are frankly what I would regard in my day as psychotic.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I mean, we know there's been lots of concern about the reduction in birth rates. There's been lots of concern about the fact that Generation Z are less likely to have dated during their teenage years than
less likely to have had sex.
Yes, and
so they're watching a very, very, very explicit porn. They're all sending pictures, but they're not actually having that human contact.
Yeah, it is sort of becoming very sort of depersonalised. I think there's increasing hostility and suspicion between the sexes as well.
Well, that's again. If you're a 15-year-old girl and your first experience anything sexual is a boy choking you, I'm thinking you probably wouldn't be that keen.
Yeah, of course. And as well, we're seeing. With regards to the sort of the numbers who are actually dating across even political lines are dropping. So we're seeing a sort of polarisation in what girls and boys are interested in terms of their political views as well, which is in part informed by the communities that they're in online.
And let's also talk about the trans issue. You touched on this a little bit earlier, that actually the trans sort of movement almost sort of arose out of pornography. Robert, do you want to touch on this?
This is more Joe.
Okay, I'll come back to another thing. Joe, come on then.
So, for example, today we saw this Glamour magazine had 9 men on the front of its cover, all dressed up as sort of hypersexual women, and the slogan that was across their T-shirts and across the magazine, front of the magazine, was "Protect the dolls." Now that is a slogan straight out of sissification pornography, which is a niche type of pornography that basically is driving trans identification in men. So,
and it's about men dressing up as sort of baby dolls.
As dolls.
Okay.
And it's this sort of really...
Try not to judge.
It's this really offensive sort of stereotype of what it is to be a woman.
And lots of that, isn't it, the identity? But if I've got my, if I've got my heels on, I'm wearing a dress, and I've got long hair, I am a woman. And what? So we all have to look like 1950s housewives to be women.
And then, of course, with girls, they're thinking, Christ, I don't want anything to do with that. So they're increasingly identifying as, non-binary, asexual, whatever it is, as a way of opting out. So, ironically, it's sort of really polarising the sexes in terms of even how they respond to it.
I mean, so much of this, Robert, we're talking about the impact on women and the impact on girls in particular, younger girls. I mean, I'm thinking, 57, I think it's going to be a problem for me, but my God, I'm worried about, teenagers and younger women. But there's also a problem for boys. I mean, I know a lot of friends of mine who've got teenage sons and sons in their 20s that are really quite scared about what the hell is going on out there. But the impact on men's brains, on men's ability to have normal, loving relationships, that's a big concern as well.
Well, you and Joe just talked about girls and young women being very scared about sex because of what they see, the violence and choking and so forth. I think men and young men also feel their own fear about performance anxiety, judging their bodies, and they see sex as something that is very mechanical, very very much about technique. And we've talked to people who say that they are, they're scared about sex because they are worried about, the other person and am I doing
but hasn't that always been the
right
case?
Thing? Yes, but you sort of get over it through communication because you're having sex with a person, and of course that's what porn does, is it breaks the link between love and sex. Also from a the best way to chart the rise of young men's addiction to porn is to look at their penis. Rates of erectile dysfunction among young men is reaching as high as 30%. Now we wrote about,
and that's just the ones we know about, because I'm assuming that's most young men aren't even saying anything.
Well, we used research from a few years ago for the book, and that has just been confirmed in a new piece of research by Lad Bible, which came out last week. It was a survey of over 5,000 men aged 18 to 29. They also found that a third of people had admitted that they have a problem with erectile dysfunction. But what's particularly
because the real world doesn't live up to the online world.
But the thing is it's actually not erectile dysfunction as we know it. It's not that the penis does not work. These men, they can get aroused to porn, but they can't get aroused to their actual partners. And that goes back to what I said earlier about porn being a super stimulus, people falling in love with that and becoming more and more distant from their partners. And I think it's one person described it as a heterosexual tragedy. Of course, it affects gay men too.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm going to apologise for some of the explicit language. Again, it's all these medical terms, you know, and it look. I just think it's stuff we need to talk about, and it's one of the reasons why I interviewed Bonnie Bloom. I got a lot of grief for that. It's like, no, we need to talk about this because she's not, a symptom of the problem. She's, she's not the problem. She's a symptom of the problem. And having read your book, I was sitting reading it. I was sitting on a plane reading it online, and I was just absolutely gobsmacked. And I just had, at the pit of my stomach, I just thought, we are in a whole heap of trouble if this is true, and I'm very, very sure it is true. It's a really, really interesting book. It's incredibly accessible. It doesn't read like a sort of an academic tome. I need to stress that to people. It's a very, very easy read, and you will be breathing deeply within about 5 pages. That just sort of the depth of the analysis and the evidence that you do give about what young people are thinking or doing or seeing, and a lot of people think, oh, well, it's not mine. Yeah, it's your kids too. It's the whole of society. I want every single MP to read this. I want every peer to read this, every policymaker to read this, every teacher should read this. We need to start talking about this. Everyone says, oh, we're really open about sex. We are not being open about what people are really doing and what people are really seeing. And this is such an important book. I do just couldn't recommend this enough to you. It's called Pornocracy, and it's by Joe Bartosh and Robert Jesson. It's available as of tomorrow. Yes. And it's on Amazon and everywhere, and it's well worth your time. Thank you both so much for coming in. I so appreciate it. It's absolutely fascinating read. 12:24 is the time. This is Talk.
year up on the high.
Axel was ordering suspicious Amazon packages to a neighbour's house. The neighbour complained he kept having to receive them, and Alphonse said, I will tell Axel to stop ordering them. Did he question his son as to what he was ordering online? Why he was ordering a knife on Amazon? We don't know. But what we do know is they failed to stop their son. They bought him the tablet that he researched genocide on. They allowed him to conceal ricin in his messy bedroom. They did not alert the police and have him detained when a week prior to the massacre, Alphonse stopped his son from getting in a cab to go to his old school, presumably to commit another attack.
What they're not probably planning to do is reduce benefits in any shape or form. And they seem to think that you can go on taxing ordinary hard-working people as well as the so-called rich. On and on and on, tax. And that doesn't have an effect on the whole economy, a negative effect if you're just spending on welfare and other non-growth related areas. This is absolutely a doom spiral.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, 12:28 is time. We're going to get to your calls in a moment. Philip Ingram's back in the studio, former senior military intelligence officer, listening to that conversation. Difficult conversation to have about pornography in the middle of the afternoon on a Thursday, but we do need to talk about these things, don't we?
We do
not
need
be
to
squeamish.
No, we do need to talk about these things. We need to talk about them in reality. It used to be, years ago, access to pornography, children couldn't get at it because the magazines were on the top shelf and they couldn't reach.
Physically.
Now the access is there, but I think it's symptomatic of what's going on in society because we've got hypersexualization across society. And you look at the number of young girls that are commenting on Love Island who say that that's brilliant. You've got all these reality programs that are objectifying men and women as pure objects and sexual objects. It's nothing to do.
And the Bonnie Blues and others who basically say that. But me having sex with complete strangers for money is no different to you working as a waitress. Yeah, it is.
It's hugely different. But whenever you get the hypersexualization and normalization outside a Mary Woodhouse controlled I'm showing my age there. But whenever you get that, it's almost a gateway to the more extremes. And when you're seeing that across every part of society, I'm not surprised that they're identifying people going to more extremes. We need to root it out at every level, but this includes programs like Love Island and your first date naked
I
or
don't
whatever
want to
it's called.
censor. I just think we need to have a reality check about what is normal, what's not.
Well,
and I think people are just under.
I don't understand how we've jumped from the Mary Woodhouse where you could not.
I can't see a nipple.
You could not say nipple. Otherwise you'd be complaining, and everything else to now you've got normality and you've got open flirting and jumping between relationships and everything else, and all these reality TV programs are something that young people are aspiring to because that's what's being fed down their throats.
Yeah,
that's wrong.
That is absolutely the worry. It really, really is. We're going to get to calls now. We'll talk about Rachel Reeves. Everyone wants to have their say on whether Rachel Reeves should have to resign. Is it over her not getting the licence? She broke the law. She was supposed to get a licence to rent out her home when she moved into Downing Street with her family when she became Chancellor in July 24. But the Prime Minister has such a I love these statements. The Prime Minister, we are told, continues to have confidence. He doesn't mention full.
It's a couple of days before she goes
The Prime Minister continues to have confidence the Chancellor, despite his words, inadvertent breach of housing laws. His official spokesman told journalists that Rachel Reeves acted with urgency to rectify her mistake in not obtaining a licence to rent out her London home and no further action is required. But despite saying that an apology is a sufficient resolution in certain cases under the Ministerial Code, he repeatedly refused to say if the Chancellor had breached it. The Chancellor rightly acted with urgency. And the Ministerial Code makes clear that in certain circumstances an apology is a sufficient resolution. Well, we spoke to a caller earlier who pointed out that, I rent properties out. I know perfectly well you have to get this licence. It covers the whole of Southwark, the borough where she was affected. And the key thing is she's an MP. She's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Her husband works as a permanent secretary in government, and her seat is in Leeds. And in Leeds, her team on her behalf, on a Rachel Reeves, full Leeds Twitter account, welcomed Leeds City Council's decision to expand their selective landlord licensing policy to include a particular area. So she knows about the concept, she has campaigned for it and supported it, but didn't think to check it when she rented her home out. Do you think the Prime Minister, having confidence in her, he had confidence in Angela Rayner, he had confidence in Lord Manderson, he's had confidence in all of these people who've gone? Sue Gray.
That's death knell. And her husband, it needs to be investigated to see whether he's broken the Civil Service Code, because he's in a very senior civil service position.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I think it's time for them to go.
Right, well, let's go to the call. See what you think. David is in North London. Good morning to you, David. Afternoon, sorry. What do you want to say, David?
Hi, Julia. Lovely to speak to you.
And you?
The first thing I'd say is socialists do this kind of hypocrisy in an amazing way, I have to say. But, this whole thing about her not knowing and everything, a few months ago, inadvertently, I got a ticket for going over the speed limit slightly. And then I also got another ticket for doing a U-turn somewhere that I shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
And in both cases, my defence was there was no signage. The speed limit was a temporary speed limit on a motorway. I didn't know. It was nothing there. And the other one was, the U-turn, nothing there either.
Yeah.
Essentially what came back was, well, yeah, we're really sorry that that's the case, but, the law's the law, and you have to...
You have to just guess what the speed limit is.
Yeah,
guess
you have to...
you can do a U-turn unless it says you can't do a U-turn, I thought.
Yeah, well, correct. There were new signs that had gone up. I didn't see. Well, the point is, I genuinely didn't know. But that's not really the point, because they said, well, no, you did what you did. And does this?
Wait a minute. Should you lose your job because of that?
I don't think I should lose my job because of that. But as you've alluded to, if you're in a position of sort of increased scrutiny, then it becomes a bit different. And also, don't forget, they said that when Rishi Sunak got a ticket for some COVID breach, he has to resign because it's a criminal offence.
Yeah.
He has to. You cannot be, the lawbreakers can't be lawmakers and all this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder, does this set a legal precedent? Because the way it works is normally, someone versus someone sets a precedent. Well, is this like the ignorance precedent?
Yeah.
Because, it just seems to be something. And also, so many of these Labour MPs who are, people of the people, and they're such down-to-earth people, they all seem to be landlords. And I'm not a landlord.
Well, no, she isn't like a sort of a secret, private landlord. She has, just like Keir Starmer, you move into Downing Street, and we want them, living above the office, and then you rent out your home.
Yeah, but I think this really just highlights the fact that, Angela Rayner also said, well, I got bad advice. I couldn't trust my advice. Yeah. Well, it's exactly the same. And it just goes to show, I think, a really important point. These people have zero, probably less than zero, real-world experience in anything. They are so incompetent because they can't even vet the advice they get and even make excuses. Well, in a workplace, you can at least make excuses to your boss in a way that you get away with it sometimes. They can't even do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you make a lot of very fair points there, David. Thank you very much indeed. Good luck paying those speeding fines, by the way, the other fines. Steve is in Leeds, wants to have his say. What do you want to say? Tell us.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon.
I'm absolutely livid with the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and it's not over the £900. I'm a taxpayer, higher rate taxpayer, so I'm quite happy to pay for the Chancellor of the Exchequer to have a house, pay no council tax, no heating, no water rates, have a car provided, so should have to get in car insurance or car tax. I'm quite happy to do that. But for her to take the mickey and then rent a house out and gain the system by £38,000 a year while I'm paying all her bills, which also means, by the way, she then doesn't pay council tax on her own house, or the heating, or the water rates, and at the same time, my council tax is going up. My energy bills are going up off a party that said they'd lower them. But guess what? She doesn't care because she's not paying any of that.
She's not paying it. Just have to worry about it. Here's the thing.
I just think it's morally wrong. If she can make 38 grand, pay it back to us as taxpayers to offset the cost.
That's it. I would rather that house was available to another family to rent. And I completely understand why you're not going to sell your family home, because let's face it, read the room, you ain't going to be in number 11 for very long, love. But that's a very strong argument that anyone who gets a private, a free residence as part of their job through government, they shouldn't be reaping a financial benefit from their home. That money should have to go towards those costs. That, I think, would be perfectly reasonable.
One of the big things, Julia, that you're missing, we've just had a Renters Reform Act.
Yep.
And the idea with that was to stop landlords kicking people out with no notice. Mm-hmm. She could lose her job tomorrow.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen to the people in the house then? Is she going to kick them out with 4 weeks' notice?
Well, no, but they'll have a lease and then they'll have a notice period. I mean, we've seen this. Didn't Boris Johnson have that? They had a house and of course he had to go and stay at some mansion provided by one of his billionaire mates.
I'd like to see the details of that lease.
But anyway, I'd like to say, no, but most people, you'll have like a year-long lease with a 6-month break clause or whatever, with 3 months' notice given. That's normal. I don't understand why people can't be kicked out of rental properties. As unfair as that is, what you want is people to be able to buy homes. I just don't understand why it's unfair. Someone owns a property. If they want to have their property back, they give reasonable notice. I don't see why they shouldn't be able to sodding well get it back. That's the whole point of owning something, isn't it? Steve, lots of very good points there. Really appreciate that. Thank you. 12:37 is the time. We're going to go for a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Reform Councillor Darren Grimes about where we are on Rachel Reeves and many other stories as well. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. 12:40 is the time. Let's go to my next guest, Darren Grimes. He's a Reform UK councillor, deputy leader of Durham County Council. I don't know why it still tickles me. You've got that job now, Darren. Lovely to speak to you.
Lovely to speak to you too, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Let's talk Rachel Reeves. Should she resign? And if so, should she resign over not getting the licence she had to get to rent out her property when she moved into Downing Street, when she became Chancellor? Or should she resign because, well, if and when she breaks those manifesto pledges on not raising income tax, national insurance and VAT at the budget in a month's time? Or either or both, should she go?
Yeah, well, the whole panoply that is being enforced upon us. Look, Julia, ultimately, I actually wonder if Rachel Reeves will be finding out how difficult the Labour Party has made it to actually survive in everything from being a landlord to being self-employed. I get contacted by so many people who say that Labour's new plans and proposals, the law being changed on renters' rights, will actually mean that the landlord has absolutely no right to get out a bad tenant. Yeah. And ultimately, I can only hope that Rachel Reeves has one of those, because then maybe she'll get a real taste for what the red tape and bureaucracy that they're forcing upon the nation is actually doing to the country.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, her defence, she didn't know about, like, for instance, this licence. You know, you think, well, I wouldn't have known about it other than the fact that, you know, she's campaigned for it in her constituency in Leeds, so she did know about it.
She literally tweeted about it.
Yeah, so we were reading the tweet out, and only 10 days ago, you'd think she might have gone, and her husband is a permanent secretary of the civil service. We've had quite a few callers very angry about this. I mean, I woke up to this story this morning, I thought, is this a big deal? Come on. And we had a bit of a question mark, didn't we, about, Angela Rayner early on about, well, were you supposed to pay more of that stamp duty or not? And actually it comes down to just a sort of slack, not paying attention to detail, kind of the sort of thing we'd expect a chancellor certainly to do, and thinking, obviously, I can probably get away with this. It just has that feel about it, doesn't it?
It does. And as I say, the landlords, the renters, the working people, they would get fined, they would get blacklisted, they would get evicted. And that's when they slip up once, right? She will get away with it. It looks like rules for thee, but not for me. And ultimately, this is from, perhaps, Julia, you and I would be a lot less bothered about the lack of the hypocrisy, the lack of moral clarity here, if the Labour Party hadn't waxed lyrical throughout the years in which you were a lone voice against lockdown, rallying against it for the safety and sanctity of our public's, mental health and well-being, that actually they wax lyrical every single damn day about how breaches of the rules meant that they had to go. They had this moral high horse that was so far up that we plebs could only look on from down below.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And remember when Keir Starmer arrived in Downing Street and he spoke outside, not on the step, really annoys me. No one speaks on the steps of Downing Street. And he stood outside and he was talking about how, the integrity and all of this, and they were going to be, more morally sort of upright, and it just collapsed. I mean, minister after special advisor after official, it's just completely and utterly falling apart. And today, in the last half hour or so, the Prime Minister's official spokesman has told journalists in a briefing that the Prime Minister continues to have confidence in the Chancellor, despite her inadvertent breach of housing law, says she acted with urgency to rectify her mistake and no further action is required. Now, continues to have confidence. He had confidence in Lord Mandelson and he had confidence in Angela Rayner, and days later they were gone. Interestingly, he doesn't say full confidence.
No, indeed, yeah, and that ultimately is a political kiss of death. I think that's Sir Keir Starmer actually saying that he doesn't have complete confidence. I think ultimately, if you are the person that's in charge for setting regulatory policy when it comes to the economy, you should really be getting these kinds of things right. It really is as basic as that. So I think there are fundamental questions to be asked about competence, but there are questions about competence to be asked across the piece. I don't think this is a country that's going to do very well out of further tax increases come the budget. And issues that we're talking about on a local level, Julia, they're kicking down the can down the road on everything from children with high needs to out of schools, home to school transport costs. They're not willing to talk about those things, but they are willing to say that we as taxpayers need to pay even more. I've never seen people struggle more in my lifetime, Julia.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk so much on the show about, the lanyard classes, totally out of touch. They've got their public sector pension, their public sector lives. They may not be high earners, but they've never had to struggle to run a business. We've got a lot of people, it's interesting, in cabinet and or senior Labour figures who grew up, like you, single parent household. And you talked about how much that has impacted your life in terms of the struggles, on one income and parents and families trying to make ends meet. And yet they seem to be utterly out of touch with, the average family working hard who were just literally running to just sort of, stay afloat right now with price increases. You're getting less food for more money, rents, mortgages, travel, your car, everything you buy now is so much more expensive than it was just a few years ago. People are really, really struggling, and we're being told you're going to have your taxes going up. Meanwhile, we've got a few million people doing sod all, sitting on their backsides all day.
Yeah, that's true. And, she is proposing that actually we tax you more while she looks like the elite renting out a Dulwich home.
38 grand a year. 38 grand a year. That's like average salary.
It is, of course it is. I mean, the optics are absolutely appalling, and it's the privileged paying for exemptions. That's the look here. So, I say to work in Britain that it's time to wake up. The purported representatives of the working class, the Labour Party, well, they won't rule out tax rises because they're ready to squeeze you like a pulp. I noticed, Julia, that they're already rolling back on the ban on North Sea oil and gas. They've realised clearly that Miliband is off his sodding rocker. Sorry, Julia, if I can use that word at this time. But look...
What, Miliband? Don't you dare say that word on this show.
But look, people are really, really struggling, and I don't think actually things are ever going to get better under this lot, and it's going to be one hell of a task once they're out of office. And as you said, Julia, I hope she's going to be able to get those residents out of her home, because she'll be needing it soon enough.
Yeah, well, exactly. And again, I think the Prime Minister's keeping her there because he knows he's going to have to get rid of her after the backlash over this budget coming. I have to say, you mentioned Ed Miliband. I was at a Parliamentarian of the Year Awards at the Spectator magazine. It was a great fun bash. Lots of senior politicians. I was sitting with your party leader, Nigel Farage, but also on the other side, a young man who works as a special advisor to one Ed Miliband, who said, I think I'm the victim. He actually said to me, I think I may be the victim of a joke tonight, putting me next to you. And I'm like, hello, do enjoy. Let's have a selfie and send it to the boss. Hi, Ed. Apparently he sent his greetings back, so that's nice. But anyway...
Did they provide a safe space, Julia?
Yeah, I know. He coped very well, I thought. I must ask you, just finally also about a story we mentioned a bit earlier. And this is a concern about, and it's something you've spoken up a lot about, because we've had a lot of worries about blasphemy law coming in this country to protect one particular religion, the religion of Islam. But Christians in Britain are basically not enjoying free speech anymore, according to a man, Felix Ngoli, who claims he was discriminated against when he missed out on a job because of his views on homosexuality. He applied to be a mental health support worker with Touchstone Leeds, based in Wakefield and West Yorkshire, back in 2022. He was offered the job, but the offer was then withdrawn after they found out that he had views. I mean, he was at university back a few years earlier, which basically is, he views homosexuality and same-sex marriage as sins. Now, I know you and I do not share that view, but do we defend his right to hold those views and work in any job he darn well chooses?
It effectively, Julia, precludes Christians from entering the workplace. That's what this.
I would have thought Muslims as well.
Does.
That's pretty fundamental, isn't it, to Islam as well?
Because that would be Islamophobic. You can't possibly do that.
I did not get the memo.
Christians totally fine. Christians totally fine. Fair game, fair game. Look, ultimately, I think what this says is that stating a biblical view that homosexuality is a sin, and a court actually expressing the right that you should have free speech, and the freedom of religion has been breached in cases like this. But Julia, what gets me is that you can happily take to the streets chanting about jihad or intifada. You saw the scenes of the masked men who intimidated people, and the police and others barely blink. I imagine the workforces would barely blink. But when it comes to a Christian championing their views at university or whatever else, well, then that's a faith matter too far. But if you're a radical inciting violence and all these other things, I just see this as, it's not tolerance, Julia, it's double standards.
And as long as he's not imposing his views on people in the workplace, either people he's helping with mental health or his colleagues, those just are his views, it's no one's sodding business.
No, it's not. I mean, how many members of the civil service vote for the Labour Party? If they're doing their job and keeping themselves to themselves, impartiality matters and all the rest of it, then fine. I know far too many of them aren't doing that. But ultimately, we cannot go down a road where speaking your faith means risking financial ruin and being blacklisted from the economy.
Again, even if we, and I'm sure we both do, completely disagree with those particular views. Darren Grimes, always good to talk to you, Deputy Leader of Durham County Council. Philip Ingram, do you want to come back in on any of that?
Well, I think Darren's right. There are double standards across society, and the double standards are created by officials trying to be too PC. But it means that the average person, the majority religion, and all the rest of it seem to be the scapegoats and seem to be being
But
pushed
it's only
to one side.
certain religious views, and again, I can disagree with someone's views, but so you still have the right to express those views and not to be, as you say, penalised and to not get a job or lose a job. Seems very basic to me. If you live in, otherwise we've just got the thought police, haven't we? Coming up, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about what's come out of that meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China, if anything. everything. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
She's not a stupid person, despite what some people might think. She's a very intelligent person and would be seen desperately trying to do the right thing by the law. Of course she should. And this, I think, is a mistake, of course. But I think that it's embarrassing and difficult because it's the sort of thing when you're dealing with taxes and licensing and registration that has legs.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing that investigative journalists perfectly legitimately can and will continue to look through. What are the unintended consequences?
Yeah, and especially after Angela Rayner not paying her full stamp duty.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:55 is the time. Just a brief chance to have a little chat about what happened overnight in Southeast Asia when President Trump met with President Xi Jinping of China. What was actually discussed in the 12 out of 10 meeting? That's what the President Trump gave it. Let's talk to Elliot Wilson. He's Senior Fellow for National Security at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. Good afternoon to you, Elliot.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I'm so sorry it's going to be short and sweet, this. I do apologise. But what did we actually learn from this meeting? What was agreed, and will any of it affect us?
Not a great deal was agreed, except essentially that they're going to kick the can down the road by a year. They've said they'll set up various agreements which will last for a year. But essentially, Trump has rolled back on some of his more extreme rhetoric. He's blinked and Xi Jinping hasn't, which is not a surprise because the Chinese are frankly better negotiators than Donald Trump is. But I think it's a de-escalation of the kind of trade war that was looming, which is good.
That's in all of our interests, yeah?
Absolutely, yes. success. A little more worrying was then what Donald Trump was saying about resuming nuclear testing. It's not clear exactly what he means, but I think anytime people start talking about more nuclear rather than less nuclear, it's always something to be concerned about.
Well, it's very strange that Donald Trump started talking about that on the plane home just after this meeting, where we felt there was a de-escalation. That was a little bit worrying. That didn't really quite tally.
I think the problem is we often don't know what Donald Trump means. He said that he's ordered the Pentagon to resume nuclear testing on an equal basis with China and Russia. Now, whether that means testing missiles or rockets, that's fine. Whether it means testing warheads, that would be a big step forward, because America hasn't tested a nuclear warhead for 33 years, I think. So if we were back into that, Russia and China would respond, and you'd be back into a kind of arms escalation, which is in no one's interest.
And that's the concern. Now, we're told there was this rare earth metals deal. I mean, obviously, that's that sort of thing is good news, certainly for the Western economy, because, of course, we've got this big concern, haven't we, that China has been basically buying up all these rare earth metals and vital resources with their allies and not leaving anything to the rest of us.
Well, China's been doing a very good job of what we tend to dismiss as soft power, really. I mean, the Belt and Road Initiative, they've gone around, the developing world, offering them good deals, good terms. And what they haven't done is lectured them on how they should govern themselves and what sort of morality and codes of ethics they should live by. So they've extended their network of allies right across the world. And we're seeing the kind of payoff for that now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we shall wait and see what happens. 12 out of 10 meeting. Elliot Wilson from the Coalition for Global Prosperity, thank you very much indeed for that. Philip Ingram, you're a former senior military intelligence officer. You can read those meetings. What do you make of it?
Xi Jinping took control of it. But Donald Trump's bit on his nuclear statement is a bit of China, because China's increasing its nuclear arsenal enormously. But it's more aimed at what Vladimir Putin's been doing with this testing of a nuclear-powered cruise missile that is called Skyfall, and a massive nuclear torpedo that he says is an Armageddon device that can cause massive tsunamis and flood cities.
Hooray! I feel safer.
Yes.
On that note, chuckling in the corner at the thought of nuclear Armageddon, Jonathan Gullis.
You don't laugh, you cry, Julia. You don't laugh, you cry.
Exactly. He's in Collins. Lovely to see you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
I haven't seen you since you've been doing.
No, I know, bits and pieces. Well, look, obviously Rachel Reeves. Who? I know, never want to. Was it now literally breaking the law? But it's okay. Keir Starmer says that she's acted quickly, so we should just brush under the carpet.
I am quite surprised by how angry our audience has been about that. And it is that one rule for them, one rule for us, and actually just keeps happening.
It does indeed.
The woman doesn't do detail.